You are watching Moto Unfiltered.
Welcome to, I don't even know what episode this is, but this is the Moto Unfiltered podcast, and I've got a tiny little co-host kind of running late because, we had to change this diaper. So he's going to be joining us along with the mastermind, Coach Rob. What's up, Coach?
Good morning, legend and little legend. How the heck are you this morning? Nothing like having your hands full on an early Monday morning, huh?
Yeah. Babysitter's running late, so the show must go on. The show must go on.
That's right.
And
well, I really appreciate you squeezing it in. I mean, no, all jokes aside, I mean, it's you set your calendar to people showing up and doing things, and then stuff happens, and then you have to put in plan B and maybe plan C and maybe even plan D. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and honestly, Coach, I enjoy the Monday mornings to catch back up with you and bench race, so it doesn't feel that much like work, which is good.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. We've been on the road for 3 weeks, and we got in late last night. And I said to Michaela, I said, what I love about our job is I don't feel like I'm waking up Monday. I wasn't driving home to like dread Sunday night to go to work on Monday. And I just, what a blessing that is. And getting a chance to bench race here. Always appreciate everybody engaging. I just really enjoy it. And I know sometimes people get a little frustrated with us because we might scrutinize something at the races or things that we think need to be changed. And we're not being negative. We're just bench racing. We're just a couple dudes that like to bench race and like to see catalysts for change and give credit where credit's due. Like Loretta's was a heck of a race this week. WSX was a great race this week, and we get to resume racing this weekend. Yeah. I don't want to get over the front of our skis, but when I looked at the registered list, they showed Seth Hammaker and Shimoda was on the list. Is that possible?
I'm pretty sure that they have to sign up the whole season. Like the teams, okay. They pay the fees the entire season. And I don't know if those get refunded if the riders get injured. So it's not like the privateer where it's like, hey, I'm going to do so and so.
Gotcha.
And then if you don't show up, you're like, well, darn it, I paid for 3 rounds. No, they pay for all 11. It's 11 now, not 12. And
yeah, that makes sense, because I was thinking Seth was going to be out for the rest of the outdoors. And when I saw him on the list, and it does have an asterisk that says, registration can tentative list as of August 1st or whatever. But I was just wondering how that was working and if Seth was back already, but I didn't think that was realistic. But you can never to have that be a potential would be something awesome. But obviously we don't want him coming back before he gets too hurt. Or before
I mean, there's a lot that there is to talk about, Coach, with Zach Osborne literally having the fastest lap times at Loretta in the 25 plus and then the Open Pro Sport class, where you're 10 years ago, maybe not even 10 years ago, I would say 5 years ago, that was the race that determined whether or not you're getting a factory ride. And for a retired guy to come back and beat all the young kids is something spectacular. I'm pretty sure he's got the Benny Bloss Beta 450, the factory 450 that he was racing. I wouldn't see anything why. Like, I talked to him a little bit beforehand because I was like, yo, Snack Pack, come on to the podcast. Let's do some more bench racing. And he just ghosted me. And then he was like, hey, sorry, bro, I've just been really putting my head down. And I'm like, okay, somebody's being real serious. And then, I see what happens at Loretta. And honestly, I asked him to come on the show not this morning, but for this particular one. And he was like, dude, I want to, but I'm getting ready for Unadilla. And once I'm done, he didn't tell me to bug him after Unadilla. He said just once the season's over with. So in my mind, what he's doing is he's like, if Unadilla goes good, I'm going to do the last 2. But if it goes bad, I'm going to just go back to being a retired guy.
Yeah. And how cool is that for Carlin, the team manager? Excuse me. They brought Zach on to be an ambassador. Obviously he's riding the bike, and it's like Brock Tickle combined with Zach's going to go out this weekend and race Unadilla. And it's just to keep making the Beta better and better and better. We know that Beta wants to expand their team next year. There's lot of scuttlebutts. There was some talk that RJ was going to go over there. I mean, he rode the bike. There was a lot going on over there at Beta. So I think seeing Zacho come out of retirement, go race Loretta's, we could talk about whether or not the pros should or shouldn't be in. Should they have their own standalone class? That's the same conversation that comes up every year after Loretta's. But when we look at the idea that he's out there training for Loretta's, putting the bike to the test, then going to Unadilla, I mean, for Carlin and the guys at Beta, gives them a really good opportunity to shake the bike down in real world environment. So I think it'll be good to see.
Riot, you're going to get electrocuted, dude.
We don't need to have that on live TV.
No, we don't.
Live podcast. Excuse me.
Yeah, this morning, I've been going hardcore into teaching him how to walk. Like we've been doing sets on his little stroller. I'm like, no, you can't have a nap time until we walk 300 meters. Okay, so you got to push this here. And then same thing with my daughter. She's been like very adverse to like learning how to ride her bike, and I'm like, yo, you turn 5, training wheels are off. We're just going, and we've gone 6 days just nonstop in a row, and. Good. I'm not letting her give up, but now she can ride her bike. So we were outside riding her bike this morning before school, and she's just got the biggest smile on her face. And so maybe I'm being kind of a hard ass, but
no, it's that sense of accomplishment. I talk to Michaela about this all the time. My ex-father-in-law, he's the type of guy that can sit down, excuse me, he can hear a song on the radio, sit down to the piano, and literally by ear can play it better than the person who's on the radio. And I've spoken with him. I'm like, I just wish I had that talent. Excuse me. And he said, I wish I could run a 6-minute mile. And to me, it just put everything in perspective. If you grew up playing music and doing that kind of stuff. And my question always is, if your mom and dad made you play the piano for an hour a day when you're 40 years old and you can play Beethoven or you can play the Fifth, was that you were forced into doing something, or was it your parents knew something? You need to have that skill and that talent. You need to be athletic. You need to be creative. You need to be able to look at things differently, play a musical instrument, do things that are hard in life. And like that. I mean, look at the smile on your daughter's face. You knew that she could figure it out. It's not like you're asking her to put her hand on a hot stove. You just knew through perseverance. And now she has that sense of achievement.
In my house, I've got a rule that can't is a bad word.
Absolutely. Can't means won't.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm like,
absolutely.
No such thing. You try. Okay. If you fail, sweet, we learn. And honestly, I just had my little brother, I'm not throwing him under the bus. I'm just going to use him as like an example, because us as riders and athletes, we get this interjection into our head, the rambling, the nuance of just always wanting to be better. And when we're not, rumination, that's the word, is rumination, where your mind is just wandering. Well, he had his first road race in 3 years, and he has his lap times from when he was on an R6 versus him now on this BMW like 1000. And he was really upset because he was a second and a half slower than what he was. And so, sorry, babysitter just showed up.
No.
And I was like, yo, dude, look at this. You're rusty, number one.
Yeah.
You're comparing yourself to past performances. Comparison is the theft of joy. And third, 3 years ago, you were 160 pounds. Now you're 205. Like, let me just get out ChatGPT and see how the aerodynamics have changed. And it's like, okay, 40 pounds, that's 3 seconds a lap. And I'm like, dude, stop harping on yourself. He's gotten big into like bodybuilding, so he's stout. And I'm like, dude, so now we know what to do. Get back down to 185 and try to ride the road race bike more, and boom, you're going to be faster. You're not going to be mid-pack pro anymore. You'll be up front. But we just get so used to, I don't know, negativity is the go-to. It's an easier muscle to flex.
Well, you can
and maybe
also
that's
tease
by
him when
design.
he was at $160. He and I were working together, so you can just connect all the dots right there.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
you go. Yep.
Exactly.
Tell him to come back to Papa, and we can get him back to this fighting weight.
I told him, if he wants to lose weight, he just needs to come running and everything with me because
Exactly.
I'm trying to. I'd really like to get close to like the hour 5, hour 10 Hydrox mark.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that goes because it coach. Okay, minor sidebar before we get into the more racing stuff because I do want to talk about World Supercross and upcoming Unadilla, and we talked a little bit about Loretta, but the Hydrox with their different stations, it kind of makes me feel like how my legs felt after riding the road bike for a couple hours, then trying to run, where the legs just feel very compromised. Where it's like, okay, at a $170 heart rate, 620 mile doesn't feel too bad. That feels like, okay, this is solid zone vor. But after a 300-pound sled push for 100 meters, it's like, nope, this is zone 7. We need to go back to like 730 miles, and that's going to feel like zone 5. It was interesting analogy that it felt pretty similar, but it's a much more compact kind of a race.
The thing that I like about what you're doing with the Hyrox is it's the ultimate blend of quick twitch, slow twitch, because you're running, I think I don't know, are they converting it here stateside? Are they just denoting it as a kilometer run, or are they doing it as a 0.6?
It's a kilometer run. So I keep doing it as 0.62 because our system is fucking dumb.
Well, if you know the background of Hyrox, I think he was a rower or something in the Olympics, and he just wanted to bring more of the endurance side to the CrossFit. So there's the genesis of Hyrox. And no, I think it's fantastic. You're not doing exercises. I've not met a single person that's ever done CrossFit that isn't injured and or burnout. So the idea that CrossFit's gone bankrupt is probably better for the health of the human race. Just a lot of the exercises.
They're up for sale again for like the 6th time.
Yeah, I mean, they're done. They're buried at this point. But if you look at the exercises that CrossFit engages, it's not intentionally designed, but it was designed with not the forethought of what's it going to do to my rotator cuff, what's it going to do to my lower back, what's it going to do to tendons and ligaments. I used to say a lot of the exercises in CrossFit games were things that they used to use as torture in medieval days. And I'm not joking. If you look at some of the biomechanics, it's atrocious. So the fact that their shoulders are tore up, low back, knees, you look at Hyrox, they're still bringing, like the farmer's carry, and then they've got the the bag on the shoulders doing the walking lunges. It's still the very cool hybrid of all of that tied in together. And I like what you said. You're looking at an hour event, so you can't go too fast, you'll grenade yourself. You can't go too slow, you'll get dropped. So that's why I say it's a very cool mixture of quick twitch muscle fiber type A, which is very explosive, to the slow twitch muscle fiber type B, which is more of that more aerobic oxidative type stress. So a cool environment. I'm glad you're training for it.
Honestly, coach, I'm training for it because Paige is like, I'm leaving you if you try to do another Ironman.
I love that Instagram post you put in when you say what your wife says when you say you're going to sign up for another Ironman. That was classic.
Yeah. No,
well, the thing that you're not being transparent on is like Paige puts you in the hurt locker every time she trains with you. So that's why you're training by yourself, but you don't tell anybody that information.
Oh, exactly. 100%.
Dude, she's an awesome athlete.
Yeah.
Dude, you got the full package. Athletic, good looking, smart. You definitely married.
Yeah, and she's a boss. So, not saying
absolutely
that's good in the bedroom. So,
Well, and what's great is when we won't even touch that. The fact that she can outlast you and ask for seconds, and you're like done laying on your back, exasperated.
They make medication for that, coach.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in all fairness, though, if anyone's met Paige, you would never know that she's as smart as she is. She's as athletic as she is. She's a cool mom, just a sweet lady all the way around. Only got a chance to meet her once, but I'll never forget that. Being in your kitchen there in Colorado was cool.
No, she's a boss. Like, she hurts my feelings a lot. So.
RCLMX says too much information.
And that's the thing about like the Moto wives, right? Is they don't get enough credit because in all honesty, I can seem like a hard ass, a badass, like we go do this stuff. And same thing with every motocross athlete that I know of. You know, I know that they're hardcore, they're badass. But then in front of their wives, that's when like you just become a pile of mush. And then your wife is over there like smacking your ass, like, no, you know what to do. Just go fucking do it. You're like, but no, I want to complain about it for a little bit. Like, no, fuck no. Because like truthfully, moto wives, if they've been around for 2 seasons of an athlete, they're keepers, because so much goes into the mental side of things, and they don't get enough credit. Guys are saying, is Kenny riding the 2-stroke? I have no idea. I mean, it'd be sick.
What 2-stroke would he ride?
An RM. You would have to ride an RM. But
what 2-stroke does RM make?
They haven't made one in forever.
That's why I'm curious. What bike are they thinking? Excuse me, that he's going to ride? Yeah,
guys, collaborate a little bit more on context in the comments. If
now we did see when Kenny got together with Pastrana and they were playing around on that RM 500, you know, that was cool, but
he was doing a little bit of moto testing. But hey, let's end the conversation with the Lorettas. Do you think, because of how fast Zach was, do you think Zach is a 4th place guy? Do you think he might be there with Prado, or is he going to be just top 10 at Unadilla?
I mean, it's $1 million question. There was a comment, and I apologize who said it here. Yeah, I'm sorry. Here it is. Tim Cross. If Zach does well at Unadilla, how many top riders will now consider the beta? That is, I think, the crux of why he's going out there, is to prove that it is a competitive bike. So there's a lot going on. The way that the 450 class is shaped up, I think top 10, it'd be more of a realistic. But would anybody be surprised if he snuck in there 5 or 6? No. I think it'd be cool for, like I say, Carlin's a super cool dude that manages the beta team. The amount of effort that those guys have put in on that program, I would love to see him be running in that top 5 with Prado, shaking it up a little bit. Wouldn't be surprised if he does it, but also wouldn't be surprised if he's 9-10 either. So you never know.
Hey, I might consider putting one of you guys in the show to ask a question or so. So you might see a link pop up down there, and if you want to randomly, I'll put you in the backstage and get your feet wet with, voice and video. But we got a question here. Zach is going to get smoked. Zach's not in race shape, and I'm going to beg to differ. Zach normally doesn't ghost me. Not saying that I'm anything special, but we're pretty good friends, and I'm, from what he's been telling me, especially what he's been doing on the gravel bike, he's probably in better shape than what he was at times in his career. I don't know if he's in as good a shape as when he won the motocross back in 21, but I definitely think he's going to go out there and put on a show for a moto, which I suspect, let's just say he gets a whole shot. I say that he runs 1st through 3rd for 15 minutes. I think his lap times are not going to be 3 seconds a lap slower. I really don't think they're going to be.
Well, here's the hard part, and we keep talking about it. Beta has not been validated to be up towards the front. The bike's capable of it. Do you blame that on the rider? Do you blame that on the bike? It's the $1 million question. 35 plus 2 is a lot different to Loretta's. Absolutely.
No. But look, did you see he looked a little thick around the waist? His nickname is Snack Pack. He's always been a little thick around the waist. Look at Cooper Webb. Look at Ricky Carmichael. Those guys were never Ryan Hughes. Here's my visible 6-pack. Here's Chase Sexton, where you look like, hey, these guys hit the gym. No, but their cardiovascular fitness was definitely there.
Yeah, we can spend literally 3 hours talking about this. When you start looking at the external physique, Johnny, just to give you a basis of reference, if you looked at Christian Blumenfeld, he looks like a fullback for a football team. And the guy goes out and he's won the Olympics, won the half Ironman, and got 3rd at the Ironman all in 1 year. So looking at the physique is not always a good one. Our sport gets a little bit enamored by the idea that someone takes their shirt off and they're chiseled. Well, there's a lot of things that are contributing to that, and that's not what we want to talk about. But just because somebody looks a little bit thick, like maybe they put on a little bit more muscle, maybe they've worked with a program before where you're not allowed to eat dairy, you're not allowed to have, red meat, you're not allowed to have anything except snow. I always tease tree bark and snails. I don't know where you're supposed to get your diet from when you're being told you can't eat gluten, you can't eat red meat, you're not allowed to have dairy. So yeah, if you look at the people who have gone down that path of hyper, you can't eat this, and this, you get hyper lean. Well, next thing you notice, within a year, they're sick or injured. They may or may not be able to bounce back from it. So it's interesting when you look at when programs change, all of a sudden the physiques start to change. And now we're seeing better durability. And we see it in the endurance world as well as we're seeing it in the motocross world. Johnny, a fun stat that would be fun to go through would be look at the average age now of the 450 class. I think that would be an interesting statistic, and go and compare it to, say, 10 years ago. The guys are definitely older. You've got Tomac in there, Roxon is in there, Webb is in there, and they certainly aren't slowing down. So yeah, you're always going to have the Jetts and the Hunters. There's always going to be Deegan, of course, probably the 3 youngest guys in the 450 class.
Wanted to have a picture of Taddy, like not in his cycling shirts, but this guy does not look in shape at all. Like these guys, they look just skin and bones. But yet this guy can do 600 watts for 15 minutes and I think I heard his VO2 max was like 96, and then everyone started fighting because of Christian Blumenfeld was recorded at like
100 plus
or something.
Yeah.
And but Christian, coach, his anatomy seems like he's got a big advantage because his chest here. Let me.
Well, if you take a picture of him on the bike and show his quads when he's cycling, he looks like an absolute fullback on a football team. If you can get a picture of him at like Nice 70.3 Worlds or something like that, where they have a picture of him on the bike, and it would help give context of what we're talking about. So, the big thing is, and no disrespect to who had,
but his
mentioned,
chest literally does this, like it.
Yeah,
it extends outwards to hold on to like his bigger heart. Like it looks weird as hell.
But again, you're looking at a guy in one season who won the Olympic distance, which is just under 2 hours. He won the half Ironman, and he got third at the Ironman World Championships, which is a 7.5 hour race. So when someone says you can't go that fast when you're that heavy, that thick, well, he proved you could. Oh, you can't go that fast and go that long when you're that big. He proved you could.
I didn't know he was that big. He's really that big.
If you look at his physique and compare him to Gustav Iden, his training partner, I mean, Gustav is a half of what Christian Blumenfeld is. When you look at their physiques,
he's like 180 or something.
He's like a 165, 170, but he's very, very thick. But the point being is, and again, we could spend the whole show going into physiology, but it's all about the strength to weight ratios. It's watt per kilogram. There's all kinds of ways that you can evaluate it.
165.
Yeah. What I love about with the motocross world is we are in my opinion, we're the biggest badasses in the world are dudes that can go fast on a dirt bike. Because to me, you've got to have sprint speed, which is that quick twitch muscle fiber type 8. It's those 2 laps of hauling the mail. Then you've got to be able to hit cruise control and hold it for 25 minutes and then still finish as strong as you started and then get a 1 hour break and do it again. By the way, let's push and pull a 200-pound motorcycle over obstacles. Every square inch of our skin is covered. And this is something that a lot of people don't take into consideration. Those pictures that you put up there, Johnny, with Christian Blumenfeld and all these triathletes when they're out there racing, their gear, their new kits are designed to actually deflect UV rays. Our gear actually absorbs the UV rays. So think about it. We're on a 600-degree motorcycle. We have every square inch from head to toe covered. The ability to wick away sweat is inhibited because of all the gear. On a bike that's extremely hot, going really, really fast on a 200-pound motorcycle, pushing and pulling, what could go wrong? But yet you take any professional motocrosser, any top amateur vet rider all the way down, they can go do a mountain bike race. They can go do a triathlon, they can go skydiving, they can go wakeboarding, surfing. But take one of my professional triathletes, give them a motorcycle without an electric start, see if they can get it started, and see if they can go 5 laps without collapsing.
You
They
know
won't
what,
be able to do it.
Coach, what I find is interesting is like watching the MotoGP guys.
Yeah.
They're very open to like their nutrition and their training, and like literally before they just hop on the bike, you'll see all of them eat a gel
Mhm.
of something,
Mhm.
caffeine, electrolytes, whatever.
Yeah.
And in moto, you never see that. It's like it's hidden that what they do. They
Giving away our secrets. You're exactly right.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I'm like,
literally,
they
this is
should be
why,
doing.
well, like at Loretta's, when the athletes do a sight lap, we come in, and this has been scientifically proven. You guys can look it up. If you take our energy fuel and you put it in your mouth and you just swirl it, it actually triggers a mechanism in the brain. So when I say that energy fuel helps with reaction time, some people think it's a marketing ploy. No, it's scientific proof. That's the science behind the product, right? We designed our energy fuel. There's an inverse relationship between heart rate and complexity of food. So we have 3 formulas of energy fuel based on the duration of the race, which correlates with heart rate. So that's the science behind our sports drink. It's, again, not a marketing ploy. We spent 5 years testing it, beta testing it. But the idea here is when you put that gel in, what you're doing is you're topping off your electrolytes, you're topping off your sugar, and that improves your ability to process speed. Think about this, right? Think about those MotoGP guys. What's their average entry into a corner? 100, 90, whatever.
Yeah, it's something 100,
Insane.
120, something crazy.
Yep. So when you're looking at, and we just got back from the UK as we talked about last week, and one of the things I always say at the performance camps is everybody wants to go faster, but your brain makes an executive decision on when to shut off on the gas and transition to being on the brakes. And that's directly related to your blood sugar levels in your liver. Your liver feeds your brain. Your brain is trying to process speed. So as your blood sugar levels drop, you'll actually get on the brakes earlier and earlier and earlier, and you'll start missing your marks. In a sport like MotoGP, at those rates of speed, you overshoot the apex of that corner, you're off the track. Ours just, we might come in and we might G this suspension out. If you look at an amateur race, you notice that you get the 3 G outs. You get the G out at the beginning of it where they come in and they just slam into it.
Mm-hmm.
Then they dump the clutch. Then they get to the apex, they dump the clutch. And then when they go to exit, they dump the clutch. That's why you see the 3 G outs throughout the corner. So when you look at a pro race, you'll notice that you don't see those G outs. It's more of a smooth center all the way through. There you go. I always say when you know what you're looking for, when you're out practicing, you can see the way that the dirt changes is exactly what you're doing to it. So there should not be 3 G outs in a corner. You should not make one corner a 3-point turn. But this is where we get into depth perception, stabilizing blood sugars. And of course, you have to be strong and flexible enough to move the bike around. So,
okay. Minor off topic, but still on topic. Like, people are talking about Webb's diet is limiting too. It's funny. Like when I've talked to Webb and he's been honest, he's like, Johnny, my VO2 max is 56. Like I'm not gonna, no bullshit. But then when I talk to like Hunter, he wraps around the question, doesn't give me an answer. When I talk to Sexton, he's like, oh yeah, mine's the best of anybody. When I talk to Prado's like, yeah, mine's in the high 70s. And I love Webb for his just transparency. And he went out and he won the World Supercross this last weekend. And Coach, okay, I love cycling, and it's all 2 wheels. I believe a lot of us did watch the Tour de France. Taddy just murdered everybody. He started at Alpe d'Huez. I believe Lance Armstrong, when he had like the 5th fastest time, it was literally a time trial from the start. So at the bottom, he had fresh legs and was ready to push for the entire 35, 40 minutes. Taddy, they had a smaller stage, but he was still like 90 kilometers into before they even went to Alpe d'Huez. And then he caught guys by like 3 minutes and then just waxed them. And he barely beat, I don't know who the original guy that had the record. He had like 1, 2, 3, and 4 or something since 85 or something.
Yeah.
but that was the big EPO days and everything. And people were instantly calling Taddy that he's cheating, and maybe he is. I don't know, because he's okay. I got to do this, coach, because my thoughts are all. I watched an interview of a pro cyclist, and he said that the difference between me and an amateur is the same distance between a pro rider and Taddy right now, which really hit me, where it was going, holy shit. So that's basically pro rider going out there, and he's 10, 15 seconds faster than a B rider. And then now you're lining up on the gate, and Ken Roxon is 10 to 15 seconds faster than you. Like, there's no competing. But
yeah,
bring this whole thing forward is everything's electronic now. Shifting is much smoother. You've got better, smaller wheels, more aero wheels, less resistance, lighter bikes. Even like we said with the skin suits designed to dissipate heat. Everything is super aero. The helmets. And I think when we talked to Zach on the show, I was going, dude, why don't we have like aero, more aero wick jerseys or anything? And he was pretty adamant that it wasn't going to make a difference at all.
And that's just a lack of knowledge. You know what I mean? It's if you take what you just said in the last 2 minutes, you mentioned the idea that Taddy put 3 minutes on everybody in one stage. That's not because of smooth shifting and better tires. I'm sorry. And it goes into that old saying, and you see it particularly at the Olympics, when somebody gets popped for drugs for third place, and we've talked about this on the show numerous times, there is nobody that's clean is ever going to beat somebody that's on drugs. It's never, ever going to happen, period. You saw it at the enhanced games. Right? They said, okay, we're going to do this where you're under doctor supervision. You're going to get 6 months that you get to train at the most elite facility. And we're going to show you what you can do when you're juiced. And I think there was only one world record that was broken. So that pretty much tells you everything that you wanted to see and know. And this is why so many people were against the enhanced games, because the mindset in the physiology world is if you publicly announce that you're taking performance enhancing drugs, and you cannot break the world records, what's that tell you about the world records? Now, some people will say, yeah, but it's a different athlete. Yes and no. It's not like they were taking a dude off the street and making him an athlete in the enhanced games. These were people who were in the Olympics. These were people that were at the top of the sport, running and doing all these other sports. So I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but I also want to live in the world of reality. When a third place guy gets popped for drugs, it tells you everything you need to know about the first 2 place guys, because there's no incremental improvements in bikes, tires. The new one I keep hearing is nutrition. You can absorb better. So therefore you're going to be able to go longer and go faster. You're not talking 6 minutes of improvements, especially since you're looking at, if you looked at every rider that's in the Tour de France, those dudes are all within 1% of one another. Plain and simple. It's no different than when we go to the factories and we look at, 10 bikes on the starting gate. The KTM is not much different than the Honda. The Honda is not much different than the Yamaha. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to win. But if you're looking at whose bikes, nobody's bikes are 13% better between the HRC and another bike.
Maybe the privateers. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about only amongst the factory guys, right?
I know.
If we're just looking at 10 bikes, and the point being is, and I find it very interesting, this is the new little tactic of the cycling industry, is we're going to contribute all these new incredible improvements in performance on nutrition. It's a smoke screen and mirror game. Now, there's one guy that doesn't like me that always comments on your videos about, that Rob thinks everybody in this sport is cheating. I did not make that declaration. If you ask me, if a guy gets popped for drugs in third place, do you think the guys in front of him are doing drugs? The answer is 100% yes. Get your head out of your ass and wake up. And again, I'm not here to be the moral judge. I'm not here to be the moral police, but if the performances seem too good to be true, they are, and history's proven it, because all these performances that we are like, my gosh. And I like Lance Armstrong. He's a cool dude.
So are you saying you think Taddy's doping?
Everybody is doping, Johnny. There's nobody can make the main tour. There's nobody that's on that grand tour that's not on drugs. And we still keep seeing people get popped, but then they call it a one-off, or they call it a this, or they call it a that. And it's, again, I'm not here to pull the sport down, but I've said it on your show before. You know, my son is very good at cycling. And I just told him, I'm like, dude, if you want to be competitive, you got to get on drugs. I'm just going to call a spade a spade.
Well, I guess it's kind of the same mentality when people ask me, like, what is the best advice amateur wise? And I say, you do whatever you can as humanly possible to get up on front of the field as fast as you can. Take it for what it's worth on that. I mean, a lot of it is you need to go to these bigger races, but I remember the Alessis having their bikes get torn down and have big bores since they were on 65s and 85s. Like, it's by no happenstance that allegedly everyone has been cheating for forever. Right. And honestly, one of my biggest things that I wish I would have done is I wish I would have ran big bores, you know, even at the local level. And it's because, again, coach, if we're being unfiltered, if I'm being just dead ass honest, because I don't have to name anyone, and anyone that's got a problem with me can talk about it, because we'll talk about my last video too, coach, because I've been kind of getting a little people have been inventing theories about the World Supercross, so this will be a good carryover to that. But my point being is, who's got the fucking money to claim a motorcycle? And if you have the money to claim the motorcycle, the rules state you have to have a certified mechanic there, which is more than likely not there at the race, especially an amateur race. There even has been times that they're not at big amateur races, right? And we saw what happened with the Deegan bike. I guarantee you that Deegan, that Yamaha was not legal for what it was. And it being claimed was the right thing to do, and it put everyone in a pony fit for stuff. But at the same time, coach, exactly what you were saying, he was doing it, so was the top 20 in the field that had that kind of stuff. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about even the Beta, you know, Osborne's bike and Phil Nicoletti's bike, is those are probably pretty comparable factory motorcycles that are racing the 25 plus and 40 plus class, you know, which is not fair if the general demographic thinks that you're just buying a motorcycle off the showroom floor.
Right.
It's not the same thing. And even in this sport, we've had WADA, we've had USADA, and then now we really don't have anything. So the risk versus reward of cheating, because hypothetically, all right, I'm going on a minor tangent here, is if you are a struggling, I get in the because who was I talking to? I was talking to Ronnie Mack, you know, and he was trying to convince me that the factory bikes were not as big of a advantage. And I was like, okay, Jimmy, you have been out front. You've ridden factory bikes. You've hole shotted stuff. You've gotten top 3s at nationals. You're a much better rider than me. Me, 30 place guy. You give me a factory bike a few weeks to train on it. What do I become? I'm not expecting to be now top 5, but I'm expecting to be in the points. And so from 30th to 18th, that's a big gap. That's a big jump. That changes my entire racing dynamic and what I'm going to do from years to come. And sure, you take a 10th place guy, you put him on a factory bike, he moves up to 5th, right? You take a 5th place guy and he moves up to 4th, maybe 3rd, maybe is battling out front for a first couple laps. Like it gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you get closer to the top. And that's the same thing with what we're talking about, the performance enhancing. It's not just about the body, it's about everything. And like literally when I go to the races and I'm asking the factory teams, like, can you show me some electronics? Like what is actually going on underneath the hood of these things? They just tell me that no, these things are pretty close to stock. And I'm just like, the Dunlop guys won't even tell me what compound the tires are. They just say, oh, this is a custom compound. I'm like, okay, I know what the compound is of the MX-34 that is off the showroom floor. But, you know, your 784B spec and A spec, you won't tell me what the middle is, the sidewalls, how much taller the knobbies are. Like, right then and there is a massive cheating advancement in front of everyone else. Is just the goddamn tire. Yeah. Right. So anyway.
Well, you're back to those unattainables. And if we take everything that you've just said, you know, the thing that I find so interesting is look, and Tim Cross said it here in the chat room, you know, when you look at PEDs, it's more about the ability to recover. I've shared here Nina Kraft from Germany. She started taking EPO, and we were at a funeral for one of our rider friends who got unfortunately killed he got ran over on his bicycle training. And we were at the funeral, and she had gotten a 3 or a 5 year ban from Ironman because she won Ironman Hawaii, but it's what we call running hot. She got popped. And I just asked her, because I've never had an athlete that's done drugs. And I said, what's the biggest difference? And she said, Rob, you can destroy yourself, wake up tomorrow morning and feel like you didn't do a thing. And she said that psychological lift, that consistency in training, the fact that you can add 20% to your weekly volume and you never get tired. And she said that was the big thing. It was a psychological advantage. So what we say in the physiology world is if you fail a drug test, you've essentially failed an IQ test, right? There's a lot of scuttlebutt about the idea that Taddy and was it Pogacar? I can't remember who it was. Taddy and
Vingegaard.
Thank you. I was thinking
as far as getting tested at like 2 a.m.
One was at 2 a.m. and then the other one was at like 6:30 in the morning.
But
go ahead.
What I heard was, at least the rumblings I was reading on Reddit and everything, is like whatever is in your system has like whatever they were testing had like a 4-hour shelf life. Yeah, so if they did stuff at 8 p.m., they couldn't test it at 2. So it was like trying to catch these guys in a small window of time.
You bring up something that's very, very important. If you study the Lance Armstrong situation, when they came off their bike, they just finished a stage and they went into the team bus, they immediately injected. Then they took the needles and they put it in a Coke can and they smashed it. Moto Man puts all the cans in his backpack, literally walks out in front of the entire crowd, gets on his motorcycle and drives off. To your point, the half-life, if it is 4 hours and you're doing it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when you just finished a stage, by the time you even get to the hotel, it's out of your system. So that's where the doctors are always ahead of the system, right? And that's where, and like you said, I'm not going to call out any names, but like at the amateur level racing in 2024, there was a young man in the super mini class that was like a 5'6" guy. And like within 1 month, there was an amateur national. He was 5'6", and within 1 month, he's running number 1 by like 5 seconds.
But coach, do you think at like, okay, I see, you know, because we're consensus is okay, cycling, everyone's doping, they work really hard, the drugs allow them to recover so that they can work even harder, right? So just in 2 months of having drugs, it's like they're putting in 4 or 5 months worth of work. But let me be devil's advocate here. Again, nobody condones ever doing that to like a minor. Like when you're an adult, sure, do whatever the hell you want to do when you're an adult. And that's why I'm a big proponent to Supercross changing the rule to 19. It's like, anyway, I'm digressing again. My point being is like in the amateur stuff, it's such a, here's 2 laps, here's 3 laps. It's a 4-lap race. Yeah. I could see like in endurance sports, a 35-minute +2, and then recovering to the second moto. I see where like, for obvious reasons, that drugs would be helpful to help you recover. But in a 3 to 5 lap moto, how would that even be any advantage? The bigger advantage there would definitely be a big bore or something in your motorcycle.
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. And it goes back to the volume of training that the riders do at these facilities. You have kids on 65s and 85s that are putting 3 hours a day on their motorcycle 4 days a week. That's 12 hours a week. Pros aren't putting 12 hours on their body during the week. So this is where, again, your question is right on the money. The ability to recover during the week is why they're doing the drugs. It's not about what you see on the weekend. And the athlete that I was telling you about that like was a 5th place guy and within the course of a month is dropping everybody. I know for a fact because it was presented to me that athlete got on Adderall. If the results seem too good to be true, they are. So in anything involved with motor racing, right? If somebody all of a sudden is significantly faster, usually it's going to be a motor issue or it's been some adjustment in the human body. And all you've got to do is go back to Lance Armstrong. All you've got to do is go back. I mean, they even talked about it this year. If you look at the average rolling speed of the Tour de France, it was the fastest it's ever been in history. And it also had the second or the third most climbing of any, when we say this, the stages, when you look at the collective 21 plus stages over 3 weeks, it was the third most climbing and it was still the fastest rolling tour in history.
Which is
crazy,
that all going to be puts you down like 50%. You know, you go from doing 25 miles an hour to 12 real quick.
Well, just think about everybody who's in the live chat with us or watching this as a replay. I want you to go out today and I want you to go 4 hours pretty hard. And then I want you to get up tomorrow and I want you to go 4 hours pretty hard. And I want you to do this for 21 days and you have to get as fast or faster over the 21 days. Everybody would go, Rob, you're an idiot. I can't do that. I just rode my bike hard for 4 hours. I did 6,000 feet of climbing and you want me to go that speed again tomorrow? Yeah, do it for 21 days with 2 days rest. Well, that's ridiculous. Okay, well then you just solved the riddle. They're human. And you go back to the Tour de France, like literally this is kind of fun to do. Go back and look at the 1930s and 40s on the tour. They're smoking cigarettes during the tour. They're snorting cocaine.
Hey, it's been proven that cigarettes is a performance enhancer monetarily. Absolutely. Because nicotine smoke expands the lungs.
No, the smoke will clog the lungs, but the nicotine, it's a stimulator. And that's the whole idea. When the body is that broken down, they're relying on stimulants to keep going day after day, but they're doing it literally in the tour. There's pictures of them smoking in the tour. And I'm not going to name who the pro was, but there was a pro that was popular in the early 90s and he told me that the thing that was going around at the pro level was take Viagra because it's a vasodilator and that'll help you if not getting arm pump. Everybody's running around with a heart on and being told they're not going to get arm pump. That's how far the pros will go to try to get better. Where there's money, there's always going to be people. Mm-hmm. I apologize. I missed who said it in here, but you know, it isn't cheating until you get caught, you know?
Well, and then where's the saying of like, you're not trying if you're not cheating, you know, like those came from
what sport is that not relevant? I mean, you've got people that are cheating in horses.
Coach. Like I'm 36 years old and some of my friends are taking TRT. And I remember in my early 20s middle 20s, when I did do a 12-week cycle on stuff. Yeah. And like, I was thinking about like just this, you know, movement is not a luxury. It's essential, right? That we have to, if you stop moving, you will die. Like there's the analogy of the shark. If a shark does not continue to swim, he dies because even when he's sleeping, he's swimming. But my point being is like, we all have to have goals. And like, I tell my friends all around me that stop racing or whatever, I'm like, you need a goal, whether it's train for a marathon or a Spartan race or a Hydrox or another dirt bike race or whatever. Like you need a goal to keep you moving. And anyway, I did this Hydrox. I did an hour and 10 minutes and I was supposed to go run 10 miles the next day. And according to the little plan that I've made, and it was like, nope, no fucking way am I getting up. I am completely toast. But I remember when I was taking stuff, it was like the whole 48-hour cycle of getting sore, recover, and get back. It was like, train hard, here's 2 hours of soreness, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
And it all of a sudden became clear as to like why all these guys die in their mid 40s and whatever, is because their bodies just were accelerated to repair themselves beyond what is natural.
Yeah.
And it was a wild feeling of just recovering and honestly not needing to sleep much or anything. And like if you watched the tour and you saw the Whoop numbers, how like Taddy's heart rate after a big stage, like I know that when I'm compromised, my resting heart rate is around 43, and if I go do something hard and the next day I'm like 49,
Sure.
and I'm like, okay, I'm not recovered. But
Now, in all fairness, how many drugs are you taking? Are you taking TRT? You taking HGH?
I'm not taking anything right now. No.
All right. So listen to what you just said. In real time numbers, you did a hard workout and the next day your heart rate was up 6 beats. You're human without drugs in your system. That's the normal body reaction, physiological reaction.
Well, in coach, what like normally is a zone 2 deal would all of a sudden be a zone 3 just because my heart rate was 6 beats higher.
Absolutely.
At the same intensity.
Yeah.
And
well, think about this. When you look, if you were to go to we were talking about some of the older classes, some of the vet riders, look at the proliferation of men's health clinics. All you've got to do is go in and say you're having a problem in the bedroom, and you'll get TRT. That's for people who don't know, that's testosterone replacement treatment. Yeah, exactly. Where there's money, that's where it's going to be. But if you go in and say you're struggling to drop body fat, they'll give you a prescription for HGH, human growth hormone. It just melts body fat. What's interesting is both testosterone and HGH are released when you sleep. What'd you just say? You feel like you can recover better with less sleep. Well, it's because instead of the body producing it naturally when you're asleep, you're getting it synthetically from an outside source. So you're able to sleep less and still get the performance improvements. There was a comment that was in here about the idea that these people are taking Ozempic. That's that GPL-1. I agree with his comment about how ridiculous it is. And what I mean by that is, if you study history and you remember, they had what was called the pirates' disease. And that was because of their lack of nutrition that were on the boats when they were trying to make their way over. Literally, their teeth would fall out of their mouth. It's called rickets. Literally, people who are taking Ozempic are having the exact same effect, because all Ozempic is doing is suppressing appetite, right? And what's astounding to me is that you have physicians out there that for the sake of $1 are willing to write a script for somebody to take Ozempic. They take the Ozempic, suppresses their appetite. And if you see most of these people that are celebrities that are endorsing it, they look like ghosts. Their face is all drawn and gaunt. And what's interesting in the human performance world, we're getting more and more clinical research that's coming out of it, of the health ramifications. So when you look at like taking EPO, the health ramification is you die of a heart attack because you're taking a garden hose and you're attaching it to a fire hydrant, right? All of a sudden you've got this huge increase in red blood cell count.
Because for those, it's edema medication, right? Is basically what EPO is.
Well, I always like to say EPO is just designed to increase the production of red blood cells. Your kidneys normally do it on their own. But what it does is the EPO sends a trigger that we want to produce more of it. It actually came from people who were struggling with cancer and had to go through chemo to try to get their body to produce more red blood cells. But if you take a garden hose and you hook it up to a fire hydrant and you turn the switch on, it just grenades everything. And that's why these guys die of heart attacks in their sleep. Now take it a step further. You've got doctors that are writing scripts for hormones that your body normally releases when you go to sleep. So instead of advocating people just sleep 8-9 hours and get the benefits of human growth and testosterone.
I want you to answer that, Coach.
Say it again.
I want you to answer that about GLP-1 or whatever the weight loss drug that's popular right now.
Getting off of it?
Yeah. Do you think there's any side effects of getting off of it, or do you think it's not like...
It's a brilliant question. And again, if you're somebody that's taking it or someone in your family's taking it, I'm not being judgmental. I just want to answer the question straight up. You should have focused on exercise and clean eating to get the weight off, not injecting something that's synthetic to get the weight off. So now you've become psycho-dependent on injection. So now when you go off of it, you're like, oh, I'm going to get fat again. Yeah, because you're going to go back to your old ways instead of exercising more.
What was the other drug where they literally like tied your tongue or something to where it was painful to eat. Have you heard about that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, they did something to your tongue, like they sewed something on your tongue that made it painful to eat something.
Well, it's like when they would go in and they would shrink the size of your stomach. They would, they put a ring on it so you couldn't, if you ate, half of what you normally do, you get sick and you'd vomit.
Yeah.
I mean, what astounds me is the advocacy of just walk 30 minutes a day, reduce stress, try to sleep 8 hours. Now, we have a weight loss division. We've had tremendous success with it, and it's not by counting 11 almonds and making people exercise till they puke. It's the exact opposite. It's reduced stress. Now, think about it. I've said it here on the show, Johnny. Your wife's a veterinarian. You can appreciate this. When we rescued this golden doodle, he's 92 pounds. I'm like, how much food did this dude eat? So literally, I go online and I look, how much food should a dog eat that's roughly 92 pounds? And the very first sentence was, if you don't feed this dog enough food, he will become malnourished. And then we have a medical industry that's teaching people, or not teaching, but advocating, inject this drug, suppress your appetite. So now you're not ingesting food, but now we don't think that there's going to be a nutritional fallout for that. It's dumbfounding to me that people will go and get their blood work done and you get the profile back and it says, here's your range of vitamin B, B12, 6, zinc, iron, iodine. When you don't eat food, what do you think is going to happen to those ranges? And then if you look at the idea, like for people who have thyroid issues, right? It just takes a little bit of iodine for your thyroid to perform correctly. Well, if your iodine levels are off, you're going to have a dysfunctional thyroid. But what's interesting is when they're looking at the idea of how do we adjust the opportunity for health improvement, you got to eat more food. So that's what's so crazy about it. You've got a medical industry that's in advocating, take this injection, suppress your appetite, and then people lose weight. And thought that was a great question. It's the same thing, Johnny. Let's go back to PEDS for a moment. Do you want to get to a point where you feel like you have to spend $3,000-$4,000 a month just to be fast? Well, most guys would go, yeah, if I can make $100,000 win bonus.
Not anymore.
Right.
But at one point, yeah, at one point for sure. And at one point, once I started going down the rabbit hole of kind of seeing the dark side of what, allegedly some people do, it was like, whoa, this is, whoa, the morals are out the window and whoa. But, and like Coach, we had DB on the show and we started getting real religious, right? And that it made me think of like that time when my dad was not doing well and he had a couple months to live and I was making these decisions and it was literally probably the first time I would say like the devil was pushing me in a direction because I saw all these kind of instant benefits, because I went from 135 pounds to 175 inside of 2 months and I just kind of felt unstoppable. And I had the people around me were like, yeah, Johnny, once we get you off the cycle, we're still going to have like not 350 milligram. It was something of tests.
Micromilligrams.
Yeah. But we're going to do 100 to 150 to just kind of keep you ready to Vince Freeze kind of stuff, and then in my first arena cross race from struggling to qualify, I was for sure qualifying. That was a big improvement for me right off the bat. That was like a 10-15% improvement. And then I hit the wall and then my life changed, and then I get the phone call, my dad, the week before my dad died in my arms. And so it was like this weird just unleash of the dark side of what could stuff. And then real quick, a door slammed and then my life kind of changed completely. And so it was like, I don't know where I'm going with this, Coach, but it's a real interesting deal. Cause like even the comment here, do drugs, get $1 million contract or struggle to get to the next race. That's not everyone's story. but it is somebody's story.
Well, you just mentioned it. You're a good racer and you got on it and you noticed, I mean, you said you put on 40 pounds of muscle in 3 months and you got faster on the dirt bike. And yet there are people out there that will say there's no performance enhancing drug that's going to make you faster. I disagree.
Well,
I'm not saying PEDs are going to make me Jett, but if the difference between first and third is 1.3 seconds, oh, you bet the PEDs will bridge that gap. Go ahead, Johnny. I mean to interrupt you.
Well, and just like because of how much you burn calories on the bike and everything, because I was riding every day, I went from 175 down to 155 real quick, but that 155 was stable, and that's been my new baseline for 10 years has been that 155. Right now, I've been.
Go ahead, excuse me.
I appreciate it, man. I do appreciate it, and I'm being honest. You know, that's what this is.
Yeah.
This Moto Unfiltered is just being honest. And like, there's times in our lives that we get pushed to a place that we don't want to be. You know, that's where the most amount of growth happens, is when we are expressed to the level of like, I don't know what to do. This is too much. I guess the analogy is like you are walking into the ocean and you finally get to the point where you cannot feel your feet anymore. And then the current just keeps pushing you out further and further. You got to make a decision real quick. Am I letting it take me out here and I have no idea where the fuck I'm going to go? Or do I start working my ass off against the current and try to get myself back to goddamn shore?
Yeah. Well, this gentleman in here, go ahead.
People get mad at me for using explicit language, but it's warranted at times. And again, Moto Unfiltered, but go for it, Coach.
Hey, it's your show. You can say what you want. If somebody gets offended, you know, please don't watch the show. We're not trying to offend anybody, but we do want it to be authentic. You know, there was a question here about will walking help with weight loss? Absolutely. You've got to remember that. Think about the spectrum of energy. The lower the heart rate, the more fat you leverage for fuel. The higher the heart rate, the more sugar you use for fuel. So if you want to burn fat, keep the heart rate low. Now, people will argue with me about net calorie burn, total hogwash. They're like, well, if you run super hard, you'll burn more calories. Yeah, but your source of calories come from your heart rate. So the higher the heart rate, you just deplete the sugar in your liver and your muscles. The lower the heart rate, the more you leverage stored body fat. And your body doesn't care if you're swimming, walking, riding a bicycle, elliptical, rower, it doesn't matter. So I want to make sure that I answered that question. The other thing, though, Johnny, that you just mentioned, you talked about walking into the ocean until your feet don't touch. Something that you mentioned earlier, and I want to tie those two analogies together. Notice that when you started getting better results, how many new people, I call them the hang-alongs, right? All of a sudden you get better results. All of a sudden you got new dudes around you. They want a piece of your success. And you're thinking, wait a second, this guy's never talked to me before. Wow, this goggle company's come up, this gear company's come up because I've gotten better results. And that's where it becomes vicious, because if you look at Chevalier, the professional triathlete that got busted, he went on YouTube. You guys can look it up. It's a professional triathlete that got popped for EPO. He walks through his whole entire process of how he got the drugs, how he used the drugs, how there was loopholes in the system at the drug testing that they were taking, blah, 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 blah. Well, if he got popped and he wasn't dominating, what does that tell you about the people that were in front of him? Well, if he's fully juiced to the gills, there is nobody that's running clean that's going to beat somebody that's on the juice. It just isn't going to happen. You can read Lance Armstrong's book, the first year that they went to the Tour de France with Motorola or Postal. I think it was Motorola, actually. And right before he left the tour, they got dead last. They got into the tour because they had the funding. Go ahead.
So what is your take on the allegations that Lance Armstrong's heart is twice the size of a normal individual's heart?
It's validity. Right. It's true. I saw the testing results at the Olympic Training Center when I was there as an athlete.
So he already has a big
he's a genetic
advantage.
Yeah, he's a genetic anomaly to begin with. And then you put his desire to be the best at all costs. Then he figures out this EPO. In his book, he talks about it. He says, the first year we went to the tour, I was told by a Spaniard that we're trying to win on bread and water. He goes, I don't know what that means. He said, Then he figured out, oh, there's some substances that can make us better. And Lance's exact words were, I didn't know what it was, but I was going to figure it out. When I figured it out, I was going to do it better than anybody else. So there you go. So the one thing that we always want to take a look at is when you look at Lance's records, you look at the time trials, you look at all these new speeds, and we know that he was on drugs. That's why I said at the beginning of the pod, if the results seemed too good to be true, they were. You look at, on the subject of the Tour de France, Floyd Landis, I don't remember what stage number was. It was a very difficult stage that he almost didn't make the time cutoff. Almost missed the time cutoff. The next day was an uphill time trial. It may have even been Alpe d'Huez that you mentioned earlier. And he obliterated the field. So on stage 10, he almost doesn't make the time cutoff. On stage 11, the most difficult stage, he wins by a mile.
That was pretty obvious, though, when that happened. When everyone did that, everyone was like,
if the results seem too good to be true, they are. And then, of course, he gets pop positive. And then the story comes out and people go, oh. And then I'm over here saying, if it seems too good to be true, it is. And people go, oh, you're just negative. You just don't believe that there's some. I've been in this sport for 42 years. I've seen it all.
Do you think Taddy's going to risk getting because I think he's tied for all-time wins of the Tour de France right now, because it's 5. But everyone knows the real number is 7 because of Lance. Is he going to risk going for 7 or 8?
Absolutely, because the drug program, again, the doctors are always ahead of the testing. Where Lance screwed up was when he came back, and because he had burnt so many people, if they hadn't subpoenaed Tyler Hamilton and said, you're either going to go live in a jail cell or you're going to tell the truth, that was the first domino that fell that exposed Lance. And when the story started to get a little bit consistent, and even George Hincapie, who is one of Lance's best friends, he got subpoenaed and either going to tell the truth or you're going to go to jail. So all they did, that Taggart guy with USADA, he just built a case against Lance, and then you have 10 against 1. And that's the only reason they got Lance. So if, and we say this all the time, if somebody were to go into the Tour de France and wanted to blow out who's taking what drugs when, but again, there's that term in the Tour that you just don't talk about it. El Porta, I think it is, or something like that, where there's a code of ethics that you just don't talk about it. What exposed the Tour de France is when that Fentina race team, when the team got caught going across the border and the car was filled with performance enhancing drugs. Team Festina, excuse me. That's what blew it apart initially, because the drugs were found in the car, and the entire team of Festina, the whole team, pulled out of the Tour. And then all of a sudden the Tour de France is like, all right, we've got some image damage control we got to do. So they went the whole other extreme, blah, 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 blah. So obviously with Taddy, their program has got it to where he's non-detectable. And yes, he's extremely talented, but he's also got the best program there is. He'll go until the money runs out. It's sad to
kind of hear that, because I would really have loved to believe that he's just that much better than everybody.
Please don't do that. And I want all the listeners to understand that. Please don't put these people on a pedestal and go, I'd like to believe that they wouldn't do it, because as what was stated here, right? Take this, make a couple $1 million a year. Don't take this and wish you had. Now, again, I can't imagine being 17 years old with this executive decision. It was never put in front of me.
Well, still let's use Lance as the example.
Yeah.
I think he had to give back something like $7 million.
Oh, he's given away tens of millions of dollars back.
But yet he's still better off by getting caught than what he would have been if he never cheated in the first place.
Very good point. Very, very, very good point. Because if you, and this is something that's a little bit, if we're looking at the way that they kind of thwarted him out, as much I like Tyler Hamilton and I love George Hincapie, they got a small little suspension, and it fell during the offseason. So they lost no salary, no bonuses, no appearance fees, no nothing. For Lance, not only did they strip him of his 7 titles, but then they made him repay back his winnings, where no other person on the same team that Lance was on. So Lance wins the Tour. Hincapie, all these guys get the benefits of Lance winning the Tour, but then only Lance was required to pay the money back. That's where I have a problem with the whole situation. And you look at the idea that James Stewart gets popped for Adderall, right? All he needed to do was fill out a therapeutic use exemption. Now, whether it was a technical issue or just he didn't think he needed to because he was on top of the game then or whatever. And then you look at the fact that, like James's nurse calling out, hey, I'm here to get my credentials. What are you here for? I'm here to give James's IVs during the motos, in between the motos.
That stuff just sounds so, sorry, coach. It completely interrupted you. Finish what you were saying.
No, finish your thought.
No. It sounds so insane. It sounds so insane that it was like that deliberate is.
But that's the crazy part. The lady, I guess, was being very belligerent, like, I need my credentials, and she's raising holy heck, and nobody knows who she is. So when somebody just says, well, why are you even here, lady? You're running your mouth. Why are you here? And then she's like, because I'm here to give James his IVs. And they're like, oh, really? Okay. So this is where, when you make a comment, I don't want to lose faith in the fact that, someone who seems so humble and such a good guy, and he's an all-American guy, man, we can't walk in their shoes. I mean, there's so much money to be made there. We talked about the idea that the series is super long. These guys trying to recover. It's tough. They don't have an off season. There's a lot of money to be made.
Well, and coach, what is the other, okay, in the Art of War, there is a section in there that talks about always give somebody an out, because you never want to back somebody up into a corner that has nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Because they will fight with everything they got.
Sure.
And from talking with people off the record that have made some messed up decisions, it was always because they were pushed to a point where I got nothing to lose. I have zero to lose. And then it creates this just kind of downward spiral. And let's
zoom out to 10,000 feet, because think about the Olympics. When somebody gets popped, let's say 2 years after the Olympics, and let's say they got third place, or let's go best case scenario, the person won and they got popped. Ben Johnson, the Canadian Olympic runner, right? So think about the second place person lost all kinds of endorsement deals for 2 years because he got second behind Ben Johnson. And the fourth place guy didn't even get to go onto the podium at the Olympics. He had legitimately got third, but it's 2 years in arrears now. Mm-hmm. That's the part. And that's why I appreciate you bringing it up today. I'm not here to condone. I'm not here to do anything. It's just when somebody asks me a question, because I've got athletes.
Well, and as of right now, it's all just kind of speculative talk, right? So
100%. I'm just using real world examples where an Olympian gets popped, and you think about the person that was legitimately in fourth that should have been third, but wasn't. So he lost the endorsement deals. He lost the ability to be on the podium at live TV, all those experiences. So I'm very fortunate. I work with a lot of top amateurs, and I see the amount of work that they're putting in. I'm not coming onto your show when somebody asks me about, this or that. I'm just going to state previous examples. And what I think about is like that young 85 rider who went from fifth to first. The parents are really asking questions like, where did he come from? And I know for a fact that he started taking Adderall. Now, whether or not it was under a doctor's prescription or what, but what was interesting is there were two people that were training together, and they both had this immediate improvement. So the parents that race against him are like, what do you think that would be? Because I'm a physiologist, I'm not going to speculate whether it's a big bore kit. You can go talk to a motor builder about something like that. You can see when somebody's running a long bore stroke. I think it was it Kiefer that was on Pulp or something? He was talking about when he knew he was running a cheater bike, and he like hole shotted everybody, and he's like, oh, this probably isn't going to go over too well because he's he's hole shotting other factory bikes. I think it was Kiefer.
See, that's what's funny is like everyone in the sport has one of those. Like it's been normalized, right? Cheating has been normalized.
But see, I have a problem with it because it's like me telling my son, if you're going to go into cycling, dude, you've got to get into drugs. There's got to be some level of reality, unfortunately.
Well, because coach, like it when I go to the amateur track sometimes, and some of the it's been a little while since I've gone to an amateur national, and I'm watching these little 50s huck some of these big ass jumps, and I'm like, there's no way in fuck that motorcycle
Is a
should be
stock
jumping
bike.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it's like it happens. It's not the kid's fault, right?
Mhm.
But it was like established at a young age that this is what we do, and then eventually the kids
You had a
start
PW
realizing
50. You had a PW 50 that got caught cheating last year at Loretta's. A PW 50.
by a pro. The parents were pros.
Yeah, on a PW 50. But to your point, then little Johnny's got to deal with the ramifications of that. But then think about little Johnny who got second, and he rode his little heart out, but he really was bringing a butter knife to a gunfight because he's underpowered before the gate even dropped. And this is where it's difficult for us because we have parents that are making decisions for their riders on a PW 50. These little guys have no idea what's underneath the hood. He's just trying to ride his dirt bike, but then he's got to deal with the mental ramifications of, I got caught cheating, but I didn't put the bike together. My dad did. But then you go the other side, right? You got, because what you've brought up today is something that I try to challenge everybody to think about. I own a supplement company. I don't want people paying to have a good workout. Think about when people do like a pre-workout drink. Let's say it costs you $5. Do I want you to spend $5 a day so that you can psychologically tell yourself that you're going to have a good workout? How about just eat real food, sleep 8-9 hours, and go have a good workout? And yes, you can take an ergogenic, like load creatine for 7 days, and you'll get more strength out of the muscle.
You just read my mind.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about creatine because, like, I've been seeing it fucking everywhere. Like, I've been even seeing it on ads where my phone is listening about, hey, give this to your toddlers because it's going to help with brain function. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, 10 years ago, creatine was almost considered taking testosterone. You know, it was right. But now it's like normalized that this is 5 grams a day is standard. Anything above 5 grams, you can't ingest, but your brain can use up to like 20 grams.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to believe here.
Well, like in our sport, creatine, they say that it will help when you recover from a concussion. And it's absolutely true. And I think what you just said is the most important component. When you go and you look at the original studies of creatine, right? Creatine, your body gets and produces it naturally by eating fruits and vegetables. So the idea here was, if you continue to take creatine from an outside source, your body will stop producing it on its own. And then what's interesting, and I don't know if this is
But
just kind of the medical.
Everything, coach, like that's the
Pardon me?
reason that, like, the drugs, testosterone or human growth hormone, you start taking it synthetically, that's like why your balls shrivel up and everything.
Yeah. Well, this is why, let's go with something that's not, we're talking about drugs today, but if you tweak your knee and you slide one of those stabilization sleeves on there, what the muscles around it do is they go, oh, I don't have to work because something else is doing the work for me. So the muscle atrophies. So now there's a difference between using something during a moto to help with stabilization, but like if you've got a bum knee, you don't want to be walking around with a brace on it. I'm talking about the kinds you slide on, not the ones that like the doctors are prescribing. If a doctor prescribes it, that's an orthopath. Do what he or she says. But to your point is, the body's very, very smart. If you put a stabilization sleeve on a joint, the muscles that surround it they'll no longer fire. So if you start taking synthetic HGH, testosterone, you start taking EPO, the thing is, yes, the body will stop producing on its own naturally. But here's the crazier part. When you look at the idea that both HGH and testosterone, human growth hormone and testosterone, those are released when you're asleep. So for these people that walk around beating their chest like I run on 4 hours of sleep, look at their waistline. They probably have high levels of body fat, visceral body fat. Well, that's because they have high levels of stress in their body. People go, my life is chill. There's no human being that can work 20 hours a day or be awake for 20 hours a day and sleep 4 hours a day and not be under a lot of stress. And stress drives up cortisol. Cortisol drives up the percentage of fat in your body. So that's why in our weight loss division, the first thing we do is we reduce stress. How do you do that? Make sure they eat enough calories. If you guys are taking notes, look up online, look up REDS, relative energy deficiency in sport, and it'll show you all the health ramifications of not eating enough calories. There's a lot of acronyms in this study, but one of the things they call LEAs, low energy availability. It's pretty simple, right? If you're burning 3,000 calories a day and you're eating 2, there's a void. There's an insufficient amount of calories. Well, it dries up stress, which dries up cortisol, which dries up your body fat. This is why we see a lot of marathoners gaining body fat running 100 miles a week. It's all blood chemistry, and it's based on physiology, and you wrap it up with nutrition. So the whole idea here is the only time your body will release HGH and testosterone is when you're asleep. I think like 10% is going to be released when you're awake.
Well, and isn't it only in deep sleep too?
Yep, exactly. That's why I'm so big on your deep sleep numbers. So on the Garmin, Johnny, what is it that we look at? The ratio of deep sleep to your awake time.
Yeah. And yesterday I had a good night's sleep, and I got 7 hours and 43 minutes, which is, I'm normally right around 6 hours, and my deep sleep was 59 minutes. Light was 5 hours and 21. I never get 2 hours of deep. Never.
Yep. Question right here. Tim was asking about peptides. Peptides are the new unknowns. The problem that we have with peptides is, and Johnny, I mentioned this before, we're starting to see the heart from people who are doing HIIT training like CrossFit. We're seeing the heart is starting to plaque. Like heart disease plaque is coming as a byproduct of CrossFit. Now we're 15, 20 years after CrossFit was popular. We didn't know that when we were doing it. It just seemed like a cool thing to do. Let's just go guts to the wall every day. Unfortunately, the high levels of oxidative stress are unfortunately destroying the heart. So to Tim's question right here, that's the scary part about peptides. We don't know what the long-term ramifications are. We do see the immediate effects of it now.
Dumb down peptides for...
Pardon me?
Dumb down peptides. It's not a hormone. Are we talking about like the B1517?
BPC 157, it usually is going to be stacked with TB 500. It's fantastic when you're looking at using that for recovery. Like if you torn an ACL and you've had surgery, a lot of times they'll already have put it in your IV drip. But again, we're at that question where how much is too much and how much is not enough. We don't have enough clinical research to say, hey, if you take X amount for X amount of days and you don't cycle off of it, you do that for 3 years, your pinky's going to fall off. We don't know that yet. So Tim, to your question about peptides, I've seen them work extremely well. But nobody knows in the clinical environment what the long-term ramifications of those are going to be. So,
well, Coach, I can tell you the only 2 times that I can't say that, but I've had rhabdo twice because of CrossFit. And the second time I realized what was going on and admitted myself into the hospital and then spent a week there hooked up to IVs and draining inflammation on stuff, and was like, this can't be good for you.
Yeah. Well, if anybody in the chat room or anybody who's watching this as a video, if you and I go down to the dealership today and we each buy a brand new bike and we go to the track and we only ride it in second gear wide open, and we go out and we do 2 20-minute motos. Let's say we do 3 20-minute motos. Well, at the end of the day, our hour meter says we have 1 hour on it. But we would agree, because we rode it in second gear wide open for 3 20-minute motos, it doesn't look very worn, but the amount of stress we put the motor under, it doesn't have a graphic illustration to say, my goodness, you just wore me out. Go ahead, brother.
Coach, you've helped me get through a few Ironmans, and you've talked to me before about like, hey, I've got this athlete that is running 40 miles a week. And I've got this athlete that's running 20 miles a week. And then I have this athlete that's only running 10 miles a week. You've told me that the guy that's running 10 miles a week is like full out effort, where the guy that's doing 40 miles, 90% of it is that fat burn zone, that real low, right? Less stress on the body. Comparing the athlete that does 40 miles a week versus the athlete that does 10 miles a week, which stress is higher on the body, or is it pretty similar, even though one guy is doing 10% the time of the other athlete, if that makes sense?
No, it makes plenty of sense. And it's going to be predicated off of heart rate. So if we go back to using second gear and we go out and we do 3 20-minute motos, if you looked at, let's say we had an RPM gauge and we downloaded the electronics, and it says that we averaged 11,800 RPMs for 60 minutes straight because we're in second gear wide open for 20 minutes. And then we come off the track and we do that 2 more times. Total work on the motor is an hour, but it's at 11,000 plus RPMs. Where if I go out and I ride in fourth gear and I'm at, let's say 4,000 RPMs, the stress on the motor is going to be a lot less because of the lower RPMs. So there's always an inverse relationship with an athlete. And you guys are watching this on TV when you watch the racing, and you're even doing it yourself. As you bring the volume up, if you're going to go do a 3-hour GNCC, you have to be doing it at a lower heart rate. So if you're going to be doing a 20-minute moto at Loretta's, you'll have a higher heart rate because of the lower duration. So there's always an inverse relationship between volume and intensity. So to answer your question, the 40 mile a week, heart rate zone 2, low 3, way less oxidative stress on the body. And what's ironic is the 40 at a lower heart rate increases durability. Tendons, ligaments, and bones are thicker. They're more resilient to injury. Ironically, the number one thing that will hold you back from going fast on a dirt bike, running, swimming, biking, is aerobic capacity. So the more time you can train yourself to train aerobically, you use fat for fuel, you produce less oxidative stress. Those are called free radical production. That's what destroys the human body. And you increase your durability and you increase your aerobic function. So the number one energy system, when in doubt, always go aerobic.
Coach, I'm going to be selfish real quick before we get into the World Supercross. Just at the end. This is what I'm doing, because I told my wife that, like, hey, I'm not training for an Ironman anymore. I'm going to train for the Hydrox. And I would really, because of, I've got foot drop and I've got axillary nerve damage in my shoulder. I actually qualify for the adaptive in both the lower limb race and the upper limb race. And I was like, this was the first time that I was actually going to use my injuries, I guess, to my advantage. I don't necessarily know how I feel about that, but it's like me transitioning, I guess, into like my age group, right? Sure. So I decided to sign up for the upper limb because we know that, like, I can dislocate my shoulder and I've got no muscle on there, but the foot drop is another deal. But anyway, I digress. I'm still trying to gain weight, and I'm up about 7 pounds. I'm like a 158 now. Like, I've been trying to gain muscle. And so for the past 6 weeks, I've just been really lifting weights until 2 weeks ago, where I'm running relatively 20 miles a week is what I can do physically with my kiddos. So like Monday I have off, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm lifting weights for an hour and a half slowly, which is new for me because I was always like run 10 miles or cycle or swim or something.
Sure.
That's way easier. Then on Thursday, I'm doing a hard day where I'll run around 8:30 pace for half a mile, and then I'll run at 6 minute to 5:30 pace for a kilometer, and I'll do that 8 to 10 times to kind of get that Hydrox deal. Then Friday I'll lift weights again. Saturday I've been doing the full Hydrox workout where it's just like a test. And then Sunday I've been doing like a slow recovery, 5-6 miles at 8 to 9 minutes, heart rate 130, 140, and do some strength training. Is that too high of intensity for the Thursday and Saturday? But I'm only doing a cumulative around 20 miles a week.
Well, the first question is, why are you trying to put on muscle would be my first question.
Aesthetically, and just I'm tired of being the smallest guy in my family, if I'm being, egocentric.
No, you're allowed to be egocentric. We all have our motivations for what we do, but putting on another 10 or 15 pounds of muscle is going to be counterproductive for something like Hyrox. You'd be better off, because this is like Taddy being, 132, but being able to put out 600 watts for 4 hours. It's all about strength to weight ratios, and you're going into a competitive environment where having more muscle can be counterproductive. Like, for example,
but I mean, the pros at Hydrox, they look bigger. They definitely look like smaller CrossFit athletes, but they're very toned.
But we don't know their genetic background. So for example, anybody who's listening to this, if you're my age, almost 60 years old, and someone's like, I want to lose weight, I always say, what was your high school weight? Because that gives you a pretty good idea when you finished hitting puberty, what was your fighting weight? There's always exceptions to the rule, but always think about it from that standpoint. Why would you want to put on weight? If you're going to be jumping on a 450, like you've stated over and over again, you better be heavier than you were when you were on that 250, or you're going to get thrown to the ground. Coming back to your question about the intensity, we need to figure out what your max heart rate is for each one of those modalities. So if you're using the rower, what's your max heart rate on the rower? Then we can determine the heart rate zone that you're training in, whether it's too high or whether it's too low. It's not a very hard process.
To stay zone 2 or 3 because I can't run. Like when I do my sprints, I'm 175 to 180. And then when I go down to do the recovery stuff, I'm 130 to 140. And then once I start the sprints again, I'm close to 150. But then
what's your max heart rate on the run?
During the hydrox with the legs compromised, or like when I'm doing my 5:30 sprints?
Fresh 3 mile, max heart rate on the run. Where there's no difference between fatigue running. Excuse me. There's not a difference
on how fast I'm running. If I'm trying to run under 5:30, my heart rate can get to 190 by the end of it.
And that's what we want to work off of. Is we want to work off of what your max heart rate is. Subtract from that your 4-week resting heart rate average. That's called your heart rate reserve. And then calculate your heart rate zones off of that. And then calculate the fact that you're carrying residual fatigue from the weightlifting into the run does not influence the max heart rate number. What you're feeling in your legs is just the residual muscle tear down. So it's like you mentioned earlier, running off the bike, you'll never run off the bike as quickly as you will on a straight up, 10K, so to speak. Now, most people can rationalize that because you just biked a 40K. Now you're trying to run a 10K off the bike at an Olympic distance. That's a completely different physiology. That's why we say when we're working with triathletes, you don't swim like a swimmer, you don't bike like a cyclist, you don't run like a runner to become a triathlete. And motocross is completely different. And when you bring in high rocks, it's yet different all again, because you got to look at the total duration of time. You've got to look at where your strengths and weaknesses are at. A lot of people don't realize this. For example, like I would be very curious to see what your sweat rate is, because there's a lot of people that don't realize that they go anaerobic because they're dehydrated. A hydrated cell carries more oxygen. So if you become dehydrated, the oxygen demands of the muscular system, it's not going down. You're trying to run a 5:30 mile. If you want to adjust it to a 7:30 for high rocks, that's cool too. But if you start to become dehydrated and you still try to hold that same pace, the oxygen demands of the muscles are the same. So what happens is there's not enough oxygen on the surface of a dehydrated cell. So the heart rate's going to go up to meet the oxygen demands. So there's times that people will go anaerobic because they're dehydrated and they think it's a fitness issue. And it's not very hard to calculate. It's just you have to know what you're looking for. That's all.
Okay. All right. Well, I will talk to you more about that, because I really
But I'm glad you bring it up. I'm glad you bring it up because you've got a lot of listeners and you've got a lot of people that are here in the chat room. Again, this misinformation that floats around, like you can try to apply these different methodologies. And that's why it's called the science of performance. You need to know what your max heart rate is per discipline. Like, for example, we know what your max heart rate is for the swim, the bike, and the run. And then we put a race strategy together based on those numbers against the characteristics of the race course, given the temperature and the humidity.
Well, like my last half marathon coach that was at the Spartan, like I really wanted to win. And I ended up finishing second. And I was really pissed that I finished second, because I flat out died after 10 miles.
But if I'm not mistaken, you went into that race sick, did you not?
I did.
Yeah, that's all it is. You just weren't at your full potential. And I love that you articulate it that way, because you're frustrated afterwards that you didn't win when you know you were capable. But what undermined you was being sick. And we saw this at Loretta's this year. We see it every year at Loretta's. Yeah. People will go guts to the wall to the Friday before, and then they fall flat on Monday. And most people will get sick on Monday at Loretta's. And then think about it. You've just spent 6 months trying to get to Loretta's. You overtrained, your immune system suppressed. You get around 3,000-4,000 people. You're so excited to be at Loretta's. You go to the opening ceremonies. You come down with a virus and your week is done. Imagine racing 5 days in a row with the way you felt after Spartan.
Nope.
But look at what it's done to your confidence, and it just drives your frustration to the roof. You're like, oh, I know I'm better than this. That's why I always say it's always better to come into Spartan or Loretta's or an outdoor national just a little bit undertrained than being 1% overtrained, because you're way faster than me on a motorcycle. My only hope is that you're overtrained. Otherwise, I know I'll never beat you.
My point being is that running too much? Because the majority of Hydrox it's like 6 miles of running. Is 20 miles good enough?
Change your perspective. It's going to be 60 minutes of how much aerobic against how much anaerobic, and train according to that. Remember, we always train to the demands of the race. So you've got to reverse your methodology right now. It's not a matter of you running too much. It's a matter of percentage aerobic against anaerobic out of those 60 minutes, because it's different muscle fiber types, A and B.
Half of it is going to be anaerobic at least.
Yeah. But the anaerobic is coming from shorter periods of time, like when you're doing the suitcase walk, or you're doing the walking lunges, or you're doing the burpees. That's a smaller percentage of the total. So for example, let's say that, what's it take you to run a kilometer right now?
A 3:45 if I'm fresh, and then it is what my goal is around running. My goal for the race is running 7:30 is what my goal is.
What is that per kilometer?
I think that's like 4:45.
So just round it up to 5 minutes, right? So the idea here is, how many of those 5-minute blocks will you have? Because I think there's 6 1 kilometers in there in an hour. 8. Okay, so then we know you've got 40 minutes aerobic against 20 minutes anaerobic. So did we just reverse engineer your training volume?
Are you saying that the running is supposed to be aerobic or anaerobic?
Yeah, it has to be, because you can't go anaerobic on top of anaerobic on top of anaerobic. You'll go backwards. You have to run aerobically, because all of your strength exercises are anaerobic by nature. Just look at your heart rate when you're doing your burpees and your rower compared to when you're running.
And they're relatively the same is what I'm doing it afterward.
Yeah, and we want to make sure that there's a bigger disparity. You almost want to use the run as a recovery.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad
there's a whole sign. No, I'm glad you're bringing it up, because I want the listeners to understand it's fun to challenge yourself, but we always start with what we want to accomplish. That's why I was asking, why would you want to put on more weight?
It killed me when I woke up on Sunday. I was like, I feel like I did an Ironman.
Well, and then you got to look at your calorie burn rate and your sweat rate, because again, if you go calorie deficient and or you dehydrate, it just becomes harder on the body. Then we get into what's called oxidative stress and free radical production. That's what gets you with the dark circles under your eyes. It's what makes your hair brittle, your skin brittle. This is what honestly is a precursor to adrenal fatigue. So for any of the listeners, when you guys are, in the gym and you're like, I got to go harder, you're just prematurely aging yourself, and your second gear pinned is what you're doing. You're wearing yourself out like a brand new bike in second gear wide open.
Well, and coach, it's I've the one that's done this. Like even my wife, like since I've been weight training, she's like, Johnny, why are you fucking supersetting everything? Like sit down, wait for 2 minutes before you do something else.
Yeah, that's the work rest ratios that we want to be looking at for sure.
And I've always just go. And that's the thing that I sucked when I was racing, is because you show up tired, you show up brittle. And then you expect your body to perform when it can't perform. And then you just get in this negative headspace of rumination of, fuck, I got the whole shot. I was out front, but I sucked.
Yeah.
And then it gets tied into your self-worth, and it's just not showing up. And this is what I hate about the sport nowadays.
Yeah.
Even CrossFit and everything, is you just like the CrossFit athletes that I talk to. Like I've got a couple friends that are honestly, I have more of an idolization for some of them than I do talking with Tomac and them, which is funny. But my point being is, and maybe it's because I see what Tomac does is mildly attainable versus what I see like a 300-pound snatch, where I'm just like, there's no way in fucking hell I would ever do something like that, right? But jump a triple, go through whoops, I can I can't think of the right word, but
can embrace that challenge for sure.
Yes. But they're telling me, they're like, no, a lot of their stuff is around zone 2. But it's like whenever you see stuff, it's always go, 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 go. And that's the same thing with our sport, is we think that you just need to do 35 minutes as fast as you can every single time you're on the bike. And then you ride 5 days a week at zone 5, and then you race at zone 6, and you'll just be better because you're putting in more work than everyone. Yeah. And it's like, no, just what you're saying and talking with you, it's hard for me to just listen to you, coach, because I wish I did more of just the terminology of slow down to go fast, where it's like, you can't race every single day on the bike.
Sure.
But our reality on the perception of what the pros do is they race at the baker's factory and everything every single day. They are go, go, go as fast as humanly possible. But that's not sustainable. And so they're really just kind of riding around in zone 2 for the majority of their rides. And then they're ready on the weekend to really put it down. And that's why it's important to have these conversations with you, coach. But switching to World Supercross, because we've been talking for a while, I pissed everyone off by talking about stadiums.
Yes.
And saying that, like, yo, we should have indoor stadiums. Supercross should be indoors. It shouldn't have, you shouldn't have to worry about the wind, because these guys are jumping 40 feet in the air. They don't need to be blown into the stands because of the wind. And yeah, the tough blocks were a major issue because they're so light. I get it. If you're trying to shift tough blocks around the entire world, it's real cheap because they're not hay bales. They're not heavy. Yeah, they're foam. But in an open stadium, they got canceled because of wind. And then talking from guys that were there, right after the wind, it just started downpouring. So the race was going to get canceled because of lightning and mud anyway. And then people started bringing up the conversation, well, would you cancel Daytona? And I'm like, okay, maybe we're being too literate here, because motocross, yes, let it have the mud races and be the rough and the rutted and everything. That, to me, includes Daytona. Daytona could be the motocross. It's the motocross of Supercross. But the rest of the Supercrosses should be fucking indoor, because it's about entertainment. Fans do not pay to see a guy roll around in the mud.
Right.
And
I totally agree.
But I pissed everyone off by having that view.
Well, okay. And then what happened in the third race? Exactly what you said could happen, did happen. I mean, you literally, Cooper Webb almost got taken out by a hay bale that is stringing across the track. You got Simonson, who had a hay bale get caught up in his rear wheel and cost him the race. You know, I'm not saying that the one that Simonson picked up was because the wind was blowing, because that was earlier in the night. But, you know, did one, and I'm the thing that I'm not looking forward to this week is people going off about the hay bales. Why were they not affixed to the ground? Look at them, they blew across the track. I mean, how many people have seen a hay bale go blowing across a track? That was just one of those weird situations. That's not,
well, because they're new hay bales. They're completely lightweight foam, which I like, because safety wise, great.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do that,
we saw the only negative side to them. They're so light that the wind could pick them up and throw them across the track and take riders out. But is that WSX fault? No, they're trying to innovate and do things differently. And who would have predicted that a tornado would have come and set in on the storm or on the stadium?
Is that World Supercross's fault, coach? Because they were at mercy of having that potentially become a problem.
Oh, I agree with you. That's,
I would roof stadium.
I don't care how much money I'd have to spend. I would always have a closed stadium, because the cost benefit, I mean, I might be wrong. I haven't seen the financials of a promoter, but I do not want to take the risk of the skies opening up and half the people don't show up. And, you know, I don't know what the revenue split is for concession stands and sales and merchandise and all that. But if people are coming, they know it's an open stadium and they look on their, you know, they look at the weather forecast and there's a 90% chance of rain, you're probably going to have a big attrition rate that isn't going to show up. And now your merchandise sales are down. Your concession stand sales are down. It's a mud bath. Doesn't make for good TV. You've got a lot of money that's already invested. You've got Jason, you've got Daniel and Christian that you flew in for the race, and you don't even have a race. You've got a mud bath and a debacle.
But see, and then a lot of people in the chat are saying, like, have them strap down, you know, Velcro bottoms to tough. I don't know how you'd have Velcro bottom on the dirt, but at the same time, you don't want to fixate the stuff onto the ground, because then that's when guys you run into it, and then they're going to endo over the tough blocks. Where in previous World Supercrosses, when these guys get off on that side, they can literally accelerate through the tough blocks and be okay. Where in AMA Moto Supercross, they're heavier, so when they hit them, they crash. And so I don't like that idea, but you can't have them blown across the track. And to me, this is the criticism that I'm giving, is that, like, we've been told that you have venture capitalists running World Supercross. So that inherently goes, money's not a problem. Yeah. But then we're going for incredibly cheap stadiums around the world, because I hate this word, obviously, a roof stadium is going to cost more than an open stadium. But yet we've chosen to have open stadiums at 5 of the 6 World Supercross rounds, right? And to me, if you're trying to not just be complimentary to AMA Supercross, but better than Supercross, this is where I'm being a critic to them. This is year 5, right? And we've been told it's not a money problem, but then I've been hearing that a lot of the teams haven't been paid yet either. And so
I haven't heard that.
Who knows allegedly if it's even true, but I've had a couple of people tell me that a lot of people haven't been paid. So
waiting to get paid. Well, there's 3 things that you bring up there. Number one, we don't know if they're cheap stadiums or that they are the only stadiums that are available at that time of the year for where they want to go, because we know
then you pick a different time, right? Because
I was going to say the calendar is the hard part, because you got to do the calendar, then you got to find out what venues are available, especially for some of the venues they're going to where they've got in Europe, I think they call them football. We refer to it as soccer or rugby. It doesn't look like we're going to big stadiums like A1. We're going to something a little bit smaller. So, it would look, and this is where WSX, I have mad respect for them, because if they go and they rent a stadium like a 60,000 square foot or a 60,000 person stadium, and then 25, 30,000 people show up, it looks like the stadium's half empty. If they go to a stadium that hosts 35, 25,000 people, it looks full, but those stadiums tend to be smaller, and those smaller stadiums don't have covered ceilings. So those guys are in a real catch-22, because they're trying to dial in a calendar, dial in a location, and make it look to where the race is full. I mean, 25, 30,000 people would be great, especially they have had to kind of pick themselves back up, and I think they're doing a great job. But if you look at the fact that we're talking about the stadium and its challenges, and we're talking about the hay bales and those challenges, those guys are darned if they do and darned if they don't. Because if we affix them to the ground with a metal stake and they hit them, now, and I'm not a physicist from this standpoint, but I'm assuming if you've got a tough block that's essentially anchored to the ground and you hit that with a motorcycle, you're going to come to a screeching halt. But like what was said right here by RCLMX, you have the old-fashioned hay bales. When you hit them, they bring you to a screeching halt like you hit the e-brake. So what is the answer? I mean, they've already gone by changing the form, the shape of them. They've got, so that way their pegs don't catch them if they happen to go by them.
That's in Supercross, AMA Supercross.
But didn't they do this? Aren't they the similar shape here or no?
In World Supercross, not in Canada. They weren't. They were just the standard rectangle made out of foam, which I do like for safety. But
but we're back to that they're light. But then if they're light, the wind blows, they go across. But if you anchor them to the ground and you hit them, it doesn't matter if they're light or not, they're anchored, you're going to come to a screeching halt, which is the same thing that they're trying to avoid with the other ones. It's like a lose-lose for all the promoters.
And also, Coach, my point is, like, what happens, they canceled out the very last, there's 3 main events, 10 points, 10 points, 25 points. The last main event was 25 points. That was 8 of 12 laps. 66% of it has been completed, and yet they just wiped it off and just averaged out the first 2 ones. Okay,
was it because it wasn't 75 or 80% complete? I forgot what the statistic or the percentage was.
Well, the rule that FIM used was just weather was inhibiting it, and riders were slowing down.
But they said that the race wasn't past a certain percentage. Therefore,
and I think it's 70.
70. Okay. But I think this is a situation where you just go survey the top 10 guys and go, hey, do you want to consider this as a complete race or not? I don't think one person would have said, no, let's just remove the race. Even someone in 10th place wouldn't have said, hey, we raced 8 laps. Yeah, let's just throw it away like we didn't do it. And again, this is where we go back to, I think there needs to be a little bit more engagement with the top guys, or all the guys for that matter. I think the 10th place guy is just as important as the first place guy. I don't think anybody, I mean, obviously, as you get towards the top, Cooper Webb would have definitely said, no, let's keep it, because it just cost him, what, 25 points, 40 points or something?
Yeah, because he would have had 25 points.
Yeah,
and then also the same thing is like, what about the fans that paid to be there and they got gypped out of that? You know?
Well, they didn't get gypped out of it. They got to see the race, but the points that we go away with, you know.
Well, they only got to see 66% of what they paid for.
Well, do you think that they would have stuck around considering that rain would have come if they'd restarted that race?
Probably not. They probably all would have.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I think them calling the race,
but
was
at the same
fine.
time, like that's what I'm saying, as a promoter, right? That's why the roof stadium fixes all of that.
Well, that's where it comes back full circle. You got ostracized because of your video about an open stadium, and then the open stadium caused there to be the removal of the third moto, which had the most points. That's having the biggest ramifications as we go into round number 2. Because instead of Cooper having, what, 17-point lead, he's now got like a 9-point lead or something.
Yeah. And then people were started telling me, like, why wouldn't you get rid of A1? And I'm like, if I could get rid of all the mud races at A1, hell yeah. Because Supercross, I don't, like, maybe this is just my perception. I don't want to see a mud race ever in Supercross. I don't want to see lime on the track. I don't want to see a privateer get third. Yeah. I mean, as nice as that sounds, right? I want to see a privateer get third in the standard settings where it is a Supercross track.
Right.
That's what Supercross is you go to Supercross because you go to motocross because, yeah, you're probably going to get muddy. You're going to get sunburned. That's the whole thing. You're going to drink beer. That is the atmosphere. Let the mud be there. And yeah, sure, weather can hurt it with lightning or whatnot, or tornado or hurricane, because I got some of that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, of course, but you guys are not understanding the simplicity of my keynote of the ideology that just roof stadiums, Supercross. Daytona is a Supercross mud race. Boom.
You're bringing up a really good point. If you and I go to an outdoor national, we know it could rain and we'll take it. If you go to a Supercross, you don't anticipate the rain, you anticipate a race. And I think that's the difference, is we as consumers of the product have gotten to a point where we don't want to go to Supercross and see a mud bath, but we'll stand outdoors. Like we've got Unadilla this weekend, and how many cool photos do we have of Unadilla being 3 feet deep mud? It's an outdoor race. We know, hence the word outdoors, we're exposed to the elements, and we know that that's the inherent risks that go with it. And the teams are ready for it. The riders are ready for it. Spectators, I mean, we'll stand out there in the rain and may the best man win. So yeah, I agree with you in that regards. And I can't imagine how difficult it is for these promoters to be able to connect all those dots. That would be very difficult.
Yeah. And give credit where credit is due. I thought the announcers, Jace and DB, work very well together. The only criticism I have with that is I'd like a little bit more analysis on some of the techniques that the riders are doing, not just a play-by-play, but the cohesion between all of them was top shelf. There was no filler words. At times I was more engaged in what they were actually talking about with some of the behind the scenes stuff with the riders than the actual race going on. They filled in some of the not as exciting parts with nice information. And I can't believe I just have to wait 9 weeks for the next World Supercross round, which is, again, my other caveat is no other World Series goes 9 weeks without the round 2. It's hard to keep that emotional connection when it's that big of a gap.
I think we make it hard on the promoters for WSX because we're like, well, they only have 5 rounds. So then they try to put more rounds in, and there's only so many dates on the calendar. So then they start early. Then we've got to go 9 weeks for there to be another round. If, they're darned if they do and they're darned if they don't. They're trying to get as many races in as they can. Obviously, it's going to help with Cooper Webb doing, Supercross only next year. It's going to make him a little bit more available.
Coach, I'm just maybe I'm being too much of a cynic. If I'm being honest.
You're not. No, you're not.
Let's just go mid-October, every weekend or 2 weekends, till the middle of December.
But
you
the
could get 4 or
problem
5 races in, boom.
But it's the riders that are changing teams that makes that not possible. You know, we heard a lot this weekend. If it wasn't for Mitch being kind enough to let McAdoo go race, he wouldn't have had a bike to race because he's contractually obligated to stay on Cowie until the end of October. Then he can go ahead and jump over to the quad lock team and he can resume, right? You've got Cooper Webb. This is our last official Supercross of seeing him on a Yamaha. Next time we see him, he'll be on a Tedder Husqvarna. So that's the hard part, is in those October, November, December races, those guys like Tomac, right? He's a perfect example. He was able to jump from the Yamaha, go to the KTM, and then immediately go do World Supercross to test the bike. So he used the World Supercross to shake the bike down for A1. So that's, again, these guys are really trying to separate themselves where they're not just an afterthought. They are becoming a premier series. I still didn't get the whole scuttlebutt about Roxon not racing because they used him in promotions, but then he didn't get paid as much as he was supposed to. So now he's not doing it all this year. I don't quite understand all of that. Do you know much about that whole situation?
Just from beyond what you reiterated?
Okay.
No. Like,
okay.
It's weird that Jason Anderson is there, and Jason looks, unfortunately, kind of like a shell of what he previously was, where he doesn't look ready. And the whole PMG Suzuki, I'm Roxon, as far as I can tell, that's why he bailed, or else he would have been the champion last year, was because World Supercross was going through the transition of being sold. And so the new owners were like, hey, we're not going to honor any contract that was previously before us. And so then Roxon was like, well, if I'm not getting paid, I'm not going. And they weren't able to figure something out again. I wouldn't see if Roxon was getting paid enough. Why wouldn't he go back? Why wouldn't he go back?
And see, I struggle with that because I feel like Roxon put his neck on the line and signed before anybody else did. And yeah, they were paying him $1 million to come do it and stuff like that. But you've got to put money in. It takes money to make money. We all know that, all cliches aside. And that's the thing that's so difficult. It's like, man, we're not privy to the closed door meetings, but I find it hard to believe that this new group of investors wouldn't have seen the value that Kenny has brought in, because he's been the draw from the beginning. And then you've got Kenny, and then you had that occasional, we got to see Tomac last year. Then we got to see Kenny, Tomac, and then Webb made an appearance. And then we had Kenny, and I don't think Deegan did one last year, right?
He did. He did. I think he did the first one.
Okay. So then we got to see Roxon, Tomac, Deegan, Webb. Now this year at the opening, how cool is it that we've got Webb is out there? I think you give Jason Anderson a few more months on the bike, because I don't think he had enough time under him. I think he'll be competitive. It was interesting. I thought that we'd see a little bit more out of Colt Nichols, so hopefully maybe he can get his racing back underneath him. But how cool is it to see Christian Craig out there and to see Dino back out there? It's not a group of privateers. Those are all champions in their own right. Think about that. Dino's a champion. Colt Nichols is a champion. Christian Craig's a champion at 250 level. So they didn't have that a couple of years ago. So the fact that they have it now is phenomenal. So that's the thing that I find so interesting when we break all this down is, these guys being able to getting a chance to go racing. I think it's nothing but going to get better. I'm not sure what Bobby Moon's talking about. He says, talk about racing. I thought we were talking about racing. We're talking about World Supercross. So
maybe he's Bobby. Behind in the maybe he started, entered.
Okay. No, sorry.
Before, and he could be 20 minutes behind what we're talking about. And coach, this is where I'm like, I just somehow sort of expect a little bit more, because it's been 5 years, right? That's my big thing, is like, yes, you get the pass the first couple 3 years, But because of the new signing of the new owners, it kind of seems like things have been delayed. And what we saw last weekend, the racing was good. The announcers were good. But then the last race should have never been canceled because of wind, right? And you can't control that. But at the same time, you can control that.
Isn't that FIM and not the new owners? Because they're
No,
under
that
FIM
is
jurisdiction.
FIM
Okay.
that canceled it. But at the same time,
Okay.
like if they did not, it would have made World Supercross look even worse because you would have had a clown show out there because tough blocks would have been everywhere. Riders would have been landing on tough blocks, being blown in the wind. It just would have. FIM did World Supercross a favor by canceling it as soon as they did because of safety, because it could have gone much worse quickly. And then the story would have been, can you believe how many riders got hurt because of safety? That's where I'm kind of going, all right, guys. Every year they've had 3 or 4 Supercrosses for World Supercross. Now they have 6. South Africa, we don't even know where it's going to be. They don't even have it on the schedule yet. I would have rather seen 3 races in incredibly professionalized inside a dome than 6 races. That's my point, is I would have rather seen just 3 well produced because they're 80% there, but this was a big problem. And yeah, you could blame it on the weather and do whatever, but I'm saying you're only as good as your redundancies. And anyone that knows anything about racing knows that that is a possibility.
Yeah.
Right. So that's my crucial criticism.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't there a lot of discussion on the dirt going in? Kind of like in the American Supercross, we go to certain venues and we know dirt's going to be an issue. JT Money does a great job of talking about, hey, when we go to, I'm just going to pull one random. I could be completely inaccurate. We go to Indiana, the dirt's really soft. The ruts get extremely deep. Pull riders off their pegs, right? Pull their feet off the pegs. I think going into, I'm going to politely disagree with you on the World Supercross on 3 different levels. I do respect that we've got some new investors. I don't know how much they know about motocross. I don't know how much they retained of the previous team. I like the idea that even though they're starting early and we do have a very long break, I do like the idea that they're trying to increase the number of races. I also like the idea that they did bring in the talent of DB and with Jace and then with Kristen. It shows
not arguing that.
No. I know you weren't in that regards, but I think the part where it fell down was historically the dirt in Canada has always been an issue, and we knew it going in, and it came to fruition. You having premonition that an open air stadium could lead to problems, and it did. So it's just the worst case scenario for these guys. But if we really boil it, like I personally don't believe in throwing out the 3rd race because we were 8 of 12 laps. To me, that's, again, as a percentage.
Jason
I know
Anderson was running 5th. That was his best moto of the night with the most points. He's the defending champion. He had the most to gain, most to lose. They threw it away.
And he's not even on the board for the top 10 now at the end of the weekend. So I agree with you 100%. It goes back to, like we were saying, allow there to be some level of subjectivity about the discussion points of the outcome of the race. But that's where that falls back on FIM, not on the new promoters, the new owners. So to me, you look at what the promoters have put in and the changes they've made, they're all for the positive. Great TV crew. I'm sure somebody's going to complain about, there was a little bit of a buffering when they tried talking to Christian. It repeated itself a few times. That's just a technical glitch. Again, not the promoter's fault. You hire people to do their job. If you hire a TV crew and a producer and an editor, that's not on the World Supercross guys. The number of riders that they have there, the depth of talent has gotten better. The dirt just let us down. Maybe they could have done a little bit more prep, but then we would have complained there was too much time in between each race if they went out and prepped it up a little bit. So I think all in all, it's heading the right direction. It would be nice to see if we can continue to get that much better, that incremental improvement at every round. Think about where we'll be at the end of it. Deep talent, indoor tracks, all these little nuances get worked out. Please do not change the commenting crew. They were phenomenal.
Agreed. Do not.
Please do not touch that.
Like I said, that was the best improvement of the the additional World Supercross was Daniel Bill lead, Jace being co-host.
Well, you know what I thought was interesting? I've always been a big advocate of Race Day Live when it was Daniel Blair and Jim Hawley. And we talked about this a little bit last week. And I felt like the way that they had that stage presented, it was almost like Race Day Live with Jason DB. And I thought that was really cool. It didn't look stodgy. They weren't in, their grandfather's button-up T-shirt, and they didn't look like the Peacock Supercross. Unfortunately, they just look a little too stodgy. The colors don't match. Their jackets don't match. It's like they're trying to make them look professional, but they're kind of missing the mark a little. Where DB, sitting there in his sweatshirt, and with Jace, they just look like they were just two dudes that were like, again, DB, Jim Hawley. They're just bench racing, and we had some good racing going on. The fact that they took that impromptu storm on the chin, they kind of made fun of it. They're laying down on the table to make sure nothing blows away. That was just so authentic. It was great. And of course, Christian getting roosted on, sitting out in the rainstorm, getting blown over by hay bales. I mean, she's a trooper on the floor. I think it's great. I see it happening, getting better and better.
All right. Well, maybe I need to tone it down just a bit with that. Again, my biggest caveat is just the roof stadiums is just really it. Is I want to see good racing, and I don't want to see things get canceled because tough blocks are flying across the track. Bar that,
definitely the worst case scenario. That's for sure.
Everything was awesome. Awesome.
What'll be interesting though is, here you've got Webb racing, Justin Hill racing, and then they're going to turn right around and we'll be at Unadilla this weekend. It'll be interesting to see that ability to toggle from Supercross, motocross. They had a couple week break. At least they could get ready for Supercross, then go right back to motocross. I mean, obviously Cooper's been very vocal. This is his last outdoor season. So I don't know. I'm actually impressed with Cooper Webb racing outdoors this year. He doesn't have that laissez-faire attitude. I mean, he's getting whole shots. He's running up front. He's trying hard. He's not just phoning it in, which is cool to see. Racing's always better when he's out there.
Agreed. And this is going to be basically a turning point in the moto stuff, because I don't see it going down to the last race for who's the champion, but this is kind of the show up or punt up. And I'm talking to Deegan. I still think he's going to get this first win at the last race, but if he wants to
does he get the win at the last race because Jett or Hunter can just phone it in and they've got the championship on lock? Or do we see a bar-to-bar race? Because we always hear that when Hurlings came over here and beat Tomac, it was like, well, Tomac was in the championship, mode instead of trying to go bar-to-bar with Hurlings. And then it kind of throws a dark cloud over, is Hurlings that much better, or was just Tomac riding at 80%? So Deegan goes and gets his win. Does it have an asterisk because Jett and or Hunter are just in championship mode? I'd hate to see that for his first win. That would stink.
I think it's got an asterisk.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's going to have the asterisk.
And like Deegan will probably say, it doesn't matter. Check still clears.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to give it up for his confidence for that.
Yeah. And so Coach, you say that the championship won't go to the last round. So who do you think is going to be the winner before we get to the last round?
Hunter. I think Hunter is.
By how many points?
By how many points? Oh God.
Yep. So you think they're gonna go 1-2 the rest of the motos? You got to keep into consideration. There hasn't been no one has won except a Lawrence so far this year outdoors. That's insane. Not one moto has been won by anybody other than
You'd be dumb
Lawrence
if
brothers.
you didn't take that bet. What I'd really like to see is Osborne come in there and be the guy that almost beats him is really what I'd like to see. Yeah. I posted that on my story.
What percentage of you think that's going to happen?
He shared it and then he deleted it afterwards.
Yeah. What percentage do you have that's going to happen?
5.
Really? You're going to go that high?
I think that there's a chance that I think it's a chance that he starts running around out front.
In front of Jett and Hunter on those Hondas.
For a lap or two. I really do.
You think he's going to get a better start than the Hondas?
I'm just.
They have traction control. They have an ECU that changes 3 times from when he lets the clutch out to where the rear wheel hits the dirt.
Coach, we're giving it a 5% chance.
5%.
Right? A 1 in 20. A 1 in 20.
against an HRC that Deegan has barely been able to do so far this year.
A 1 in 20.
Oof. I like your optimism, because I love Carlin. I love the whole beta team. I love everything Carlin does over there. Nothing would make me happier than to see that happen. But to bet against the HRC and traction control in an ECU that adjusts 3 times before the rear wheel hits the dirt over the gate, I just don't know that the beta's got it for that.
Hey, it'd be cool. It'd be a good story.
It'd be very cool.
Make it good.
Yeah. Dude, you know what's going to happen if all of a sudden Osborne comes out of the first turn first? Your phone is going to melt.
Hey, that's what I want to see. I want to see premonition engaged.
Yep. So does this mean that we see Anderson starting to come into some outdoors and get ready for SMX? Or what do we see with Anderson for the rest of the year? Or is he just all WSX?
I don't know.
Because isn't Colt Nichols
all SMS?
Isn't Colt going to be eligible for SMX?
I think Colt is.
So the reason why I was asking, because we know we know Roxon will be. So we know that the PMG group is definitely working on bikes for that. I wish there was a place, and maybe do you have a shortcut place that you can go to see where Anderson is at in the SMX world?
It's just the SMX.
Because if he has to do LCQs, I don't see him showing up. But I think he may have missed too many races.
Colt's in 23rd, so he has to do he's got to do.
I'm sorry. What about Anderson?
He is 27th. So
where do you have to be to not do the LCQ top 20?
Yeah, and he's got to make up 100 points basically. So okay. I don't see him racing it.
Yeah, that's what RCLMX said as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys, for looking it up so quickly. What about those Starks getting 5 out of the 6 hole shots?
I'm gonna make a video about it, and it's all just altitude. You lose power 18%. I think
so. Here's the $1 million question:
like 2% per 1,000 feet.
When we go to the next round, do you think you'll see the same hole shot percentage on the Stark?
If they're at sea level, I'd have to look at things. No, I don't.
Okay.
But like they've got a cap where it's like, hey, this is how much horsepower you can make. Boom, boom, boom. But then I don't even know what elevation Canada is there, but
I was surprised they were even talking about elevation. I honestly didn't even factor that in at the Canadian round. It wasn't until they were speaking so much about it. I didn't think it'd be an issue
about it until the Stark started.
And did you pick up on what Jay said about, or I think Christian Bead actually brought up, one of the 3 or all of them collectively, the idea that with it being at elevation, could that be why Jason was a little bit flat? Because we know that he always flies in literally last minute before Thunder Valley.
Could be.
I think that's a very good point, because he just didn't seem like himself. Didn't help going down in the first turn and then having to go into the pits. That was just a weird, hitting the back of Colt and high siding.
Okay, that's not crazy, but that's like
it changes the bike for sure.
Yeah, that's like maybe an 8% decrease in power. But if the Starks have 8% more power than you do, boom.
Well, and you've ridden the Stark, you've ridden the electric bikes. I was surprised how Anstie and Dino and those guys were able to get around because you'd see the Starks go on the inside, and we know they've got that incredible amount of torque to accelerate so quickly. Mad props to the guys being able to get around them. And I loved how Dean Wilson said, those e-bikes were a pain in my ass. I thought that was hilarious. And, he has a point that they were actually slowing the race down, which I could see that being a frustration for sure.
They were.
Yep.
Well, Coach, I think
good show.
Maybe our longest podcast ever so far. So
no, I've enjoyed it. I like where the conversations just organically go. I'm looking forward to Unadilla.
Me too.
No, I'm sorry. You think that Deegan will get his win here, or you think it'll go down to the last round? Ironman.
Last round. Yep.
All right. And who do you have for this weekend at Unadilla, Hunter or Jett?
God. I say Jett.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. Who are you going for 250s?
Maybe just because I'm biased, I'd like to see Davies.
Yeah, I think it's pretty hard to argue against Davies as well. He seems to be on a roll.
Yeah.
I appreciate all you
guys that showed up in the chat room. What were we saying,
time.
Coach?
No, I was just going to say it's crazy, but we've got to really get down to brass tacks on who our designations team is going to be if we're even going to send
needs
somebody.
to do it. He's said no so many times. He's got to do it.
You say that, but does he get the support of Yamaha? You know, you look at who's our other 450 rider.
He should. Justin Cooper's been doing it for. Just send both those guys, Justin Cooper and.
But
and
I'm just saying that if you look at KTM, you've got, let's say you send Beaumare and you send Tomac over, or do you go Yamaha, send J. Coop, Deegan, and Davies? Because you know that there's the team politics behind the scenes as well, right? I mean, if we're going to send one rider, it's much better for us to send two of the riders from an economies of scale standpoint. So I was curious what you think. What color is our team going to consist of? We know there'll be no green. We know that for a fact. We know there'll be no Husky over there. At least I don't think, I could be wrong, but I can't imagine that RJ is going to want to go to designations and lose another week of getting the Ducati sent down. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that, dude. Oh no, we didn't say we are going to send Davies for designations, did we?
No.
We were talking about who was going to win this
Unadilla.
weekend.
Yeah.
We were just talking about who's going to win Unadilla was Davies for designations. Oh, I see what I said. I'm sorry. I said send Deegan, J. Coop, and Davies over. My bad. Thanks, guys. Do you grab, again, we don't know how the team set it up. I can hear Bobby Reagan saying, if I'm sending two, give me a 250 rider. Let me send the 250 rider. Maybe they send Menier or Dudney or somebody over.
That wouldn't be bad. I mean, it wouldn't be bad.
Well, as up and down as the 250 classes, I don't think it's bad because you've had Beaumare's had some really good, top three. I love where Ryder D's at. I don't know. That's why I was wondering, do you send Ryder D over underneath the umbrella of, well, no, because he's not on 450s yet. So you'd have Tomac as the 450 rider, and then you would have, I don't know. There's a lot going on now in this designations picking, because if the way that the roster is set up, you've got KTM that's got Tomac and Beaumare that could be able to go. Then you've got Deegan and you've got J. Coop that could go. Selecting who these 450 combo 250 is going to be difficult. It's going to be interesting. Maybe we can talk more about it next week.
I think we should, Coach.
All right, brother.
Love you, man. Until
next
too. Time.
Appreciate everybody.